I want to welcome you to the Retro Rogues Live. Please pay attention to our warning graphic. It says that the Retro Rogues Live show is intended for an adult audience and not intended for children under the age of 13. Parental discretion is advised. I hope everyone can hear me over the sound, the noise of the crowd. We're coming to you live from the floor of Comic-Con, sort of. Anyhow, I want to welcome to the show. My name is Dave Beatty. I'm one of your hosts. For nearly the last 30 years, I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer. I worked on a lot of fun things that some people have heard of, such things as Batman Incorporated, Justice League of America, Grifter, X-Men, Sword of the Braddocks, and Red Skirts. I've got my Red Skirts Command shirt on this evening. Very proudly wearing that. This is the official command insignia of Red Skirts. This is a shirt that was actually printed here at Kirby Tees, which I'm also broadcasting live from the floor of Kirby Tees' main office at the same time. Isn't that amazing? Technology. Anyhow, want to welcome you here to the show. Want to welcome back my co-host. This is Mr. Eric Alexander, who's also broadcasting live from the floor of San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody noticed, but we actually had to move because the crowd noise was getting too intense. It was going to totally mess up the audio for the show.
Get back! Stop!
We're running it. We're running and gunning right now, folks. Here at Comic-Con. So it is what it is. We'll do our best. And I do want to acknowledge James Stone in the house. He says, "Hey guys, hey, right back,
Hello.
You James." And then if you don't know me, my name is Eric Alexander, but I go by Bass God 14. That is Bass God 14, not Bass God. That's bass, like a bass guitar. And I am also the associate producer of a feature film called Occupants, which featured Star Trek Voyager actor Robert Picardo. I also worked on the comic book tie-in for that. I was the editor and co-publisher with that, along with Dave, who was the artist on that project. And most recently, I did a short film called Connection Established, which Dave and I were recently talking about at our business meeting yesterday. So been pretty busy, a lot of stuff going on, especially here at Comic-Con.
Right. Here at Comic-Con.
That's right.
It's a lot like I remember and kind of different. So there you go.
We're going to be having a lot of fun with that later. That's going to be our main segment tonight. So please stick around. We're going to do Warrior Nun first. Then we'll do some pop culture. We'll do some streaming wars. But the main thing is we're going to be talking about Comic-Con. We're going to be talking about a lot of our memories of Comic-Con back when it was an actual real thing and not just virtual.
Yes. Well, if that's good, let's off the top, let's just do some business here real quick. The first thing is that probably starting next episode, we're going to start saying that the show is produced and sponsored by Bad Bob Productions and also Kirby Tees. So there may be a little sponsor graphic that comes on there. That's basically just Eric's company and my company. So it's not like we're selling out to anybody or anything. We're
selling out to ourselves.
Yeah. So it's just to help us, ironically enough, with nuisancey things like taxes, which is kind of ironic. Well, there you go. There's the
Kirby Tees and Bad Bob right there.
Yeah,
together.
there you go. So that'll be probably starting next episode. But that's our companies. That's nothing different from what you all have heard before. And then the second thing, just real quick. We would like to get some general reaction from everyone about Eric and I have been discussing the idea, instead of necessarily doing 1 3-hour show, the possibility of maybe doing 2 hour and a half shows on 2 separate days. We're curious to see what people feel about that, what they think about that, specifically those of you who enjoy watching the show, those of you hopefully in the Rogues Gallery. We want to know how you feel about that idea. About breaking it up and having it maybe be on 2 separate days. I don't necessarily know if that means it's moving for Wednesday. That's going to depend upon basically your feedback and what you might want to see, from the show. So please, in the comment section, let us know what you think about that. The idea of the Retro Rogues being maybe 2 hour-and-a-half shows as opposed to the 1 3-hour show. The obvious benefits of that is that the news segments obviously can be more timely and reflective of what's happening in the moment. And then as far as the review segments go, we'll still probably be doing a current thing and then a retro thing. And then it'll depend upon how it all works out, what's kind of what, we're going to be talking about Lower Decks soon. We're going to be doing, the whole season of Lower Decks. So if we had 2 episodes, depending upon how Lower Deck, well, with the way Lower Decks comes out, still 1 week. But anyhow, the point being is that it could change the format slightly, but not that much.
Well, so. Lower Decks is a great example of why we're talking about this, because like Picard, Lower Decks is going to be coming out on Thursdays, which means it's coming out the day after our show. So we're always going to be basically a week behind as we're doing Lower Decks, the same way we were with Picard. With Picard, I don't think it was that much of an issue. We still managed to find a pretty big audience with Picard. But I could see it being an issue with Lower Decks, where we're talking basically a week after the episode aired. And is that yesterday's news? That's kind of the question that we're putting out there for everybody else too. So keep that in mind. That is going to be our next big sort of current series that we're going to be reviewing. And that comes out August 6th. Our show will be August 5th. And we do have some fun stuff planned as sort of a preview to that, because there is some stuff to preview with that, with the animated series and next gen stuff that relates to Lower Decks. So we'll be talking about that kind of stuff the day before. So keep that kind of stuff in mind. That's what we're looking at. Some of you might have problems being here on Wednesdays. If that's the case, let us know. Some of you may have problems with the time. Right now, I feel like our time schedule is definitely geared more towards West Coast people, which is what Dave and I are. Maybe we try to do something on the weekend that's a little earlier. That's an idea. We have to figure it out with our schedules and all that kind of stuff. But let us know, because we do want to try to cover as many people as possible and just expand the show. That's the bottom line, is we want to make sure that we are expanding the audience and getting as many people involved with the Rogues Gallery and the comments, because we love that stuff. We love the interaction. We love to hear what you have to say. Even if you don't agree with us, we can actually deal with that. And a lot of shows can't. So
that's true. All right, so very cool. So again, please, those of you hopefully watching or listening at home, those of you that have enjoyed the Retro Rogues, please let us know how you feel about this idea. You can either post in the comments here. Obviously, you could actually direct message either Eric or myself on one of the various services that we're available on, whether you're talking about Twitter or Facebook, or you could just post a comment actually just on the Facebook page itself, and we'll be happy to address it and look at it. Well, actually, if you post a comment here, you are sort of, depending upon how it works, posting a comment on one of those 2 services anyway. That was stupid of me to say. Anyhow, you get
Although I will mention, it's kind of funny the way that works, because, like, for instance, I know with the Facebook, the comments that people do live, it'll show up on the Facebook. Like if you're watching the video, it'll show up. If you go to the YouTube, the live comments don't show up in the YouTube comments. Like you have to do them separately. In other words, the way YouTube does it is they have live comments that are only there while the broadcast is going. You know what I mean? And then they have the comments that you can do after the video posts, So not every format works exactly the same way. Twitch is weird too, because I remember we finally had somebody on Twitch commenting. I went back and none of the comments were there. So obviously they have something similar to YouTube where none of those comments don't post in those posted comments. I don't know. It's weird. So not every format works the same way.
Interesting. Yeah, learning something new every day. Technology.
Exactly.
All right. So if that's good, let's go ahead and get with our first topic of the evening. We're talking about Warrior Nun, episode 3. This episode is called Ephesians 6:11. All right. So I don't know if you want to share my screen, Eric. I do have a graphic up if you want to share the screen. It's so dramatic and action-filled. Okay, so my initial comments. How do I put this succinctly? I said this at the business meeting to Eric. I don't want to watch this show anymore. there's all the impressions. I feel like I'm done. That's it. And I'm going to be honest with you. Here's the unfortunate reason I'm done with this show. The training choreography in the back is crap. I literally I couldn't stand it. I was watching them do stuff in the back, and I'm like, that's what you've got. You can literally tell where a couple of the people who are doing stunts that are supposed to be training, they're just kind of making it up, and they're kind of just doing the same thing, and they're not sure if they are not in camera. I don't know. It looked weird to me. No one else in the world is watching the background action, but I'm going to be honest with you. I was bored. I was bored because they're standing around talking. And I'm like, can we, because like, for example, this image looks like you would think that she's training. And we do get a training sequence in this. But most of this show kind of, it's at the same place. It's like she's not actually being a warrior nun. She's just still kind of going, and then the vest she's wearing that makes you think that she's training is actually, well, I'm getting into spoilers. Anyhow, that's my overall impression. I'm ready to move on. Eric, what was your impression of episode 3 of Warrior Nun?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same place you are, Dave. This actually gave me flashbacks to Picard, and anybody who saw our Picard reviews know how much I loathe doing those reviews. Even though it actually was very good broadcasting, we actually had a big audience when we were blasting Picard. But one of the things that really struck me, what I realized was, this is a minor spoiler, but it's not like a real big spoiler because we've been talking about the lack of action the last 2 episodes. Well, the lack of action is still here, and you mentioned it as well. It reminds me of Picard in that it wasn't until the end, basically the last scene of episode 3 of Picard, where they finally got into space. Do you remember that? And we were really ripping that because we were like, this is Star Trek. And it's taken us 3 episodes just to get into it. Basically looked like a somewhat better version of the Vulcan shuttle, which we didn't say that in the review, but I've been thinking about that. That's basically what that stupid ship in Picard looks like. It looks like a slightly better version of the Vulcan shuttle in the motion picture. A blingier version. I shouldn't even say better. Just like a blingier version of the Vulcan shuttle is what that thing looks like. So it kind of gave me flashbacks to that, into that experience and how negative that was. I've got a lot of stuff for our Comic-Con stuff because a lot of our Comic-Con coverage is actually going to be about us talking about Comic-Con back in the day, our experiences at Comic-Con. And I got all sorts of stuff from over the years, and I was digging through stuff trying to find things. And I came across this just by coincidence. This has nothing to do with Comic-Con, but I have an extensive collection of toys and things like that. And I came across something, and it was like, this is just perfect for our review. Okay, this is what we were promised. You see, it's a little puppet, one of those little fighting boxer puppets. You ever seen these things, Dave?
Yeah, I've seen them.
Still in the bag, by the way. I don't know why I have this, but it was in one of my toy boxes. What does it say? What's it say? What does it say there, Dave? It
says the Fighting Nun.
The Fighting Nun. Okay.
Fighting Nun.
Okay. So why are we watching a show called Warrior Nun where all she does is run away? Oops, I gave a spoiler. I gave a big spoiler there. But that's what happens. She runs away.
Yeah.
And this is episode 3, folks. This is episode 3 of this. There's only 10 episodes. This is not like back in the day where I love the next gen excuse. Someone always has the next gen excuse. Well, the first season, the next gen wasn't that good. Okay. There were still good episodes of next gen. Okay. We're 3 episodes into this, and the central premise of the show hasn't happened. In Encounter at Farpoint, the pilot, Dave and I were talking about this off the air. I feel like Netflix not having pilots is really what's kind of stirring things up. Because like in Encounter at Farpoint, what do? The very first scene in Encounter at Farpoint is Picard on the bridge of the Enterprise. That's the very first scene of the show. Watch it sometime. I think actually technically he's in his ready room, but the next thing you see is him on the bridge. I mean, we're in space immediately. He only has half the crew. He still has to get the other half of the crew to start the adventures and all that kind of stuff. But he's already in space. He's already on the Enterprise. You already know exactly what you're getting. It's Star Trek. You know what I mean? This is Warrior Nun, right? This is what this is supposed to be. The Fighting Nun, right? my little boxing puppet. That's not what we're getting. It's just I can't help but go back to the old banner from last week. You know, this is what we got, right, Dave? This is what we got, like right here.
That's it. And for the first couple of episodes, I was cool with it because I thought it was kind of interesting, and I thought, okay, well, they're taking their time setting everything up. By the time that she meets up with the priest, coordinator, administrator guy, whatever he
Whatever he
is,
is. By the way, do you still even understand what his position actually is? Why he's there? My understanding is in the original source material, because I went back and looked, and I've been trying to find source material for you guys. By the way, that's another reason I bring up that picture. It's hard because Warrior Nun was an independent comic book, and it's hard to find. It's been out of print for a long time, except for the new one that Avatar was doing that I showed you guys. But that's a new story. By the way, has nothing to do with the television series either. So I don't understand what Avatar is doing either. Why not do a story based on what the Netflix show is or whatever? I don't understand any of it at this point. But the thing is, my understanding is what they did in the comic book, because I've looked at the descriptions, is it's the warrior nuns. The girls are the physical fighters, but the guys, the priests, are supposed to be like magicians. So basically, they're using like magic and things like that. So it's not like it's just like, one or the other. They both have a role to play. You know what I mean? And in this one, even though I really like that character, that's one of the few characters actually I have been enjoying, because I think it's because of the actor. Because I think he has some gravitas and all that kind of stuff. And I just like the way that he plays it. You still get that sense of, what do you do here? In fact, even the character kind of acts like that. It's like, what exactly do you do? Why are you here? Because that's not really well established. There was an element that I thought would have been perfect, which was at one point, it's Ava, right? She's the main character. I think that's her name.
Yes, Ava.
She actually says something like, "Oh my God, the exorcist is real." And I just realized that. And the nun is all like, "No, it's not." You know what I mean? It's like they had this one little opportunity. By the way, that would have now shown you maybe what the priest actually does and why he's there, is because maybe the priest is the guy actually does like the exorcisms and stuff like that. To me, that's like an obvious angle to go. And then you see, oh, well, they need him because you have to be a priest to do an exorcism, and priests have to be guys. Now, wouldn't that be kind of a changing around of things? You know what I mean? It's subverting expectations and stuff like that. So yeah, these kick-ass warrior girls, they have to have a guy around. You know what I mean? Because they need him to do this, Obvious thing, and it's obviously not going there, because she instantly says, "No, it's not. Exorcism isn't real. No, what's real is this silly thing that we're doing. That's what's real. That stuff is fake. This is real." Yeah, right. The warrior nuns that don't fight, or at least the warrior nun doesn't fight, is the point. There's plenty of other warrior nuns that actually do fight to varying degrees, and that gets into more spoiler territory, but for the most part, they don't. They don't.
And it's one of those things. I almost don't even want to go into spoiler talk with this, because I'm just done.
Yeah. No, let's go ahead and do that just officially. We already kind of did it. We already kind of got into spoilers with this one. But let me just put the spoiler banner up there. I did want to acknowledge some comments real quick too. Bobby is in the house, and we were actually talking about you the other day, Bobby, and saying, "Hey, we didn't see him comment last week." I was assuming you were at the movies, so that's what I was figuring was going on. He was talking about earlier. We were talking about the changes in format we were looking at, and he said, "I think that's a great idea. Often have to miss the very end of the show with kids and work. If it allows you to dig into things more deeply, I think the content exposure will benefit." And that's a great point. That's also one of the points of, is a 3-hour show too long? Is some people, they just don't have the time to spend, 3 hours doing this. You know what I mean? I totally understand that. People have lives, people are busy. And then as far as our review goes, Bobby says, "Yes, episode 3 was the end for me as well. Passed out halfway through." And that's the problem. Where's the warrior nun? Where's the fighting?
I also fell asleep during episode 3. I also dozed off. And then when I woke up, I was like, shoot, now I got to rewind it and watch it again. So, yeah, I understand, Bobby. And that's the thing. It's like between what we got going on here with the Retro Rogues, what I've got going on with Kirby Tees, plus my full-time day job, plus production on Red Skirts is still moving forward. I know people haven't seen a lot lately, but I'm still working on Red Skirts too. It's a lot. And, it's like for something to not hold my attention, it's just sort of like, okay, I feel like I'm wasting time. And that's kind of the thing. It's like, like I said, first couple episodes, I'm cool for a slow burn. You want to set it up. That's good. But by the time we get to episode 3, she's in there with the other Warrior Nun people. She meets Shotgun Mary, which was cool. Which even Shotgun Mary, she shot one dude. Okay. She's like, I'm not going to shoot you. Just give me the information. Rah, 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 rah. And then she's
I really dislike that personally, by the way.
Yeah,
and not so much. Well, I shouldn't say not so much. I didn't like the fact that she was almost like just setting it up so you could like morally kill him, I guess. You know what I mean? Which is like, no, because you knew what you just did. Still not moral. You know what I mean? But the bigger problem I had was I was fascinated by the idea of this mercenary guy who actually these guys were able to kill the major warrior nun, the halo bearer. They were good enough to do that. Obviously, that they said it was like an ambush and a setup, but he didn't know. Like, he didn't know what he was getting into. He was just so good that he was able to take out their main person, the main warrior nun. And then what do we get? He just gets shot just like a bitch. You know what I mean? Just like a dog. You know what I mean? I'm like, you did all that setup for this character and you gave him a lot of character. Like, the actor was really hamming it up and doing a good job. I was like, I'm fascinated by this. So we're going to get like this group of like mercenary guys that are going to be a contrast to the warrior nuns. No, just shoot him. Just shoot him. He's dead. Gone. That's going away.
And just to give it like a little bit more context, our retro review for this episode was actually originally going to be, we're going to get into a little bit more about why it didn't work out, but we were going to do End of Days, the Arnold movie. Because Eric suggested, he said, I think it'll go good with Warrior Nun because of subject matter or whatever. And I thought, okay, because I'd actually never seen End of Days. I'd seen bits and pieces of it, but I've never really gone back and watched it. And I got about halfway through End of Days, and I didn't turn End of Days off because it's a bad movie, but we're going to get into why I didn't get to finish watching End of Days. But it had nothing to do with the quality of the film. And even End of Days, I was like going, well, this is more interesting. This is more entertaining. I think it was supposed to be funny in places, and I was kind of like, ooh, I don't know if that's really funny.
Right.
So End of Days had some issues, but at least it was entertaining. At least it helped. Like with End of Days, there were times where I was leaning in because I was like, all right, well, how are you? Whereas like Warrior Nun, this episode, I was just like, you just put something on to diminish her powers. Really? 3 episodes in, you're going to diminish her powers? Shouldn't we be powering her up? Shouldn't we fast track her training? Like, shouldn't we be like, I don't know. I found this whole thing to just be sort of like anticlimactic. It's like we're 3 episodes in. She's with the team. I feel like this whole thing of her running away, this could have been the first episode. And then her falling in with the people who are like, sort of squatting in the house and all this other stuff and going to the club and then seeing the demon and then realizing I have a higher calling. I have to return. I can't just ignore this. That's a better story structure for me.
Right.
Just right off the bat, that works better because then she's there and she's training and she decides I can't hack it. I got to go. And then she disappears in the middle of the night. They're trying to find her. One of the other warrior nuns gets murdered by this mercenary group. It's like, we have to find her. She's out there alone. She's not fully trained. It just, I don't understand why they set this show up this way. And that's the main thing. I'm just like, I feel like nothing's really happening here. She's circling the same thing. I can't handle this. I'm going to leave. Right. I can't handle this. I'm going to leave. All right. Well, I want to leave too.
And it's like, what kind of sympathy does that give you to give the character? To me, it doesn't give me any sympathy towards her. I'm like, you're just a selfish brat. They even said that. And that's one of the things sometimes I see with these writers. Sometimes I'm like, do they think we're stupid, or are they just trying to see how stupid we are? Because they actually have a scene where one of the characters says that. Basically, you're just a selfish brat. And it's not like the Mother Superior or the priest is saying that. It's one of the other nuns who's basically the same age as her is saying, you're just a spoiled, self-centered brat. You know what I mean? So it's like, so they're telling us, yeah, that's exactly what she is. But it doesn't make any sense. This is someone who was a paraplegic, who spent most of her life in an orphanage, right? Now she has superpowers. You'd think that would motivate her. You know what I mean? To do something other than go party and trip on ecstasy. What am I missing here? You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing. It's like I just didn't feel like the way that they structured the story worked with what they were trying to do. At first, I was okay to go along with the ride, but it just reaches a certain point where it's like, okay, the concept isn't bad. I think the concept is interesting. A lot of the actors and the actresses that are in it, like I enjoyed all of them. Like I liked the lead actress. I thought she was interesting, her performance and stuff. So it's like, it's not like anyone's doing a bad job per se. I just didn't like the way the story was structured, and it made it boring. It's like, okay, how many times do we have to return to the club? I mean, even and I keep going back. Last week we did Underworld. It's the same thing. It's like you look at things like Underworld, you look at things like Blade, End of Days.
Well, think about Blade's opening club scene compared to this garbage. You know what I mean? Remember, I mean that just pulled you in immediately. You were like, oh my God, that you immediately realize that this is like, this really isn't my dad's Dracula or whatever. You know what I mean? Like this is different, this is cool. This is intense. I'm not getting any of that from this. You know what I mean? It's just like,
to me, it feels like they don't have really the budget to pull off whatever they were trying to do. And they're trying to write around the fact that they don't have the budget to actually show them fighting the demon creatures. They just don't have the budget for it.
But you could deal with that really easy, Dave, because they said there's two types of demons. And one of them can't do anything in the physical world. They are like the traditional demons. They have to basically possess someone. So you just show a dude fighting. You know what I mean? Is that hard to put a dude there fighting one of the nuns? I mean, come on. It's not rocket science, right?
Well, you put
Chris
some
Roberts
context.
in the house. Got to acknowledge the Rogues Gallery here. Chris Roberts in the house says, hey, guys. Hey, right back at you, Chris.
You put some contacts in. You do a little bit of makeup. You're good to go. That's the thing. It's like there's I keep thinking back on all the kind of shows I grew up watching when I was younger, and they didn't have a lot of budget either, but at least, it worked story structure wise, and it kind of made sense. Every episode of the Hulk, had one or two scenes where he turned into the Hulk. Right. This Warrior Nun thing, I think we've only the first episode did we really kind of see the Warrior Nun team kind of together as a group, and we really didn't see them fight very much. They were trying to fend off the thing. A couple of them got killed, and that was it. Other than that, we really haven't seen them really even as a group do that much. We've seen them together every once in a while, but most of the time, everybody's just standing around talking about obligation and succession and, religious stuff that only kind of works within the context of the show. So it's just sort of like, I don't get it. I don't. That's the big thing. I don't understand if this is what they wanted to do. Why did this get greenlit? I don't understand why it got greenlit. And to drive that point home even further, we're going to be talking about Comic-Con here coming up. Okay, I've actually been fortunate enough to have one property actually got signed to a movie deal and died in development hell. Okay, even though it was with two different studios, and both times it just stalled out. Okay, that project, Star Gods, was actually emerging and actually being sold at the same time, licensing wise per se, as Warrior Nun was. Warrior Nun made it to a show, and it's just like, I don't understand why this got greenlit. And then Star Gods is full of all this crazy, awesome stuff, in my personal opinion, and it dies in development hell because, they just don't know if it's going to click. They don't know, if you know what I mean? And that's the thing. It's like, okay, well, I've seen a property die out because they didn't think it would work, and it would connect with people, and they're concerned about, well, I don't know if the story's strong enough. I don't know if the characters are strong enough. I don't know if the action scenes are strong enough. And then this thing's on Netflix? How did this get greenlit?
Yeah. No, it does make you wonder. And also, as far, like I said, I'm not hugely familiar with the source material, but I've done a lot of research because of us reviewing the show, and it doesn't seem to me like they're faithful to the source material at all. Because the source material was all about this sexy warrior nun that runs around killing demons. I mean, that's basically what it is, and that's not what we have at all. That's not what we have at all. It's like, you know, the picture we showed earlier. It's like this angsty teen weird thing, and the comic is just sort of there. I guess they did it for the name. They like the name Warrior Nun, and thought maybe that would be cool, you know?
Yeah, and it's weird because it's like, for example, like Chilling Adventures of Sabrina's on Netflix. Okay, they just canceled. I think if I remember correctly, I read somewhere they just canceled Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. You know, that delves into sort of some questionable subject matter and stuff. But, you know, at least Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is fun. I think Sabrina had more action scenes and more fun payoffs while still doing the angsty teen drama thing. Like, you can do the angsty teen drama thing and still be entertaining, you know, and that's the thing. This just felt like we're just having the same friggin' conversation over and over and over again.
Bobby Chambers mentions, so I thought the origin was cool. Then it was just a steep drop off. We get it. She is a scared, brooding teenager. Laugh out loud. And that's kind of exactly what my take is, Bobby. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what you do with that. You know, we've seen great teen superheroes. Spider-Man comes to mind right away. Robin comes to mind right away. You know what I mean? There's all sorts of ways that you can do this, and you can make it fun. You can make it cool, and they're just not doing it, in my opinion. I want to say this. One issue that I have is, again, I'll go back to the fact that we don't do pilots anymore, especially Netflix. The way they do business, they don't do pilots anymore. And also, they do these very short seasons. And what I feel like is happening, it's the same thing that happened with Picard. We talked about this. I feel like this first season is just going to be the first act of a 3-act story. It's like we're not getting a complete story. And that's bull crap. That's lazy writing, and that's bad marketing, and it's bullshit.
Well, and here's the thing. I thought the whole part of the joy of the short season is the fact that you don't have to have a lot of filler episodes.
Right.
Wasn't that one of the upsell?
That's supposed to be it, right? It's supposed to get right to the point, you know, because we've only got 10 episodes to do this. In The Mandalorian, we only had 8. In the other one we reviewed, we were talking about the Chris Judd one. That was only like 6, wasn't it? It was like 6 episodes or something like that.
Yeah.
You got to cut to the chase, people. You know what I mean? You can't have it both ways. You cannot have it both ways. If you're going to give us these short seasons, which, by the way, back in the day, this is not a new thing. Back in the day, they would call them a mini series. Now they're telling us that's a series. But back in the day, we had these things like V, which was epic and awesome. Same amount of content, same amount of airtime, much better story, and an actual middle, beginning, and end. An actual real story. And we're not getting that anymore.
Well, and let me drive this point home even further, and then I personally want to stop beating up on Warrior Nun, because I feel like I've said everything I have to say. What this show, because I agree with Bobby, I kind of liked the origin and I kind of liked the setup, and I was curious to see what they were going to do with it. But it just seems like all they want to do is stand around and talk about, you know, obligation, and then someone's going to run away. And with everything going on, I don't want to watch a show about that. And in a weird way, I feel like with Picard, to a different extent, I feel like we've already covered this ground. You know, the idea of I need to serve and I don't know if I want to. I feel like I'm good with this topic, to be honest with you. So, but here's what I would compare this to. Back in the 90s, when the Lost in Space movie came out, the one that had the big budget one that came out, I forget the year it came out. Darn it, I can't remember the name of the lead actor who was in it. The dude from Friends was in it. Anyhow, that Lost in Space movie, the same time that was being made, they produced a pilot for a Lost in Space television series. It was going to be a reimagining and a sort of theoretically a contemporizing, kind of like the movie of Lost in Space, but doing it sort of like on a TV budget. Okay. You can sometimes, or at least you could back in the day, you could actually find that pilot on YouTube in order to watch it. It is the most boring thing you've ever seen in your life. They never get near a spaceship. They never put on spacesuits, and they just kind of talk it to death. And at the end, they're resolved that they're going to get on the ship and go do the thing. That's what this show is reminding me of. It reminds me of Lost in Space, that TV pilot they produced that was not good enough to basically put on television. Well, that's what this is. They're just talking this thing to death. And it's like, okay, I get it.
And that's why you need pilots. That's why pilots are important, Netflix. That's why you should actually be greenlighting pilots and giving some of us independent filmmakers a chance and see what we can do, and then decide if you want to go to a series or not, instead of just greenlighting the whole first season, which, of course, again, the first season is much more condensed than what it used to be. Standard season used to be like 22 episodes, 22, 26, depending on the era, the network, all that kind of stuff. We're not even half that at 10, you know? So I just really feel like the more I watch these modern shows, these streaming shows, I'm like, man, you really need your freaking pilot. Or you can be like Mandalorian and go a little bit hybrid and actually not just be stuck with serialized is better, because that's the vogue. It's just not true. It's absolutely not true. It's complete hogwash. It has to do with the way that you do the story. That's what matters. Sometimes serialized works better. Sometimes episodic works better. Do a hybrid like the Mandalorian. Have a few episodic episodes with the serialized story. Now you can start playing around a little bit more and maybe get something good. How about that? We can compromise.
Yeah.
Because I think the way they're doing it now, I just think we're just going to get more and more of this kind of trash. I mean, it's just they're it's like you said, you just completely illustrated my point. It's like you're basically saying the same setup, completely different genre and everything, totally different property. You're like, all the things that didn't work, you could see them in the pilot. That's why pilots are made. So you can see this doesn't work, man. This just does not work. It's just not going to be good. We're not getting that anymore. Now it's just like they commissioned the series and people say that's bold, that's great. Meanwhile, they're going in tons and tons of debt because they're greenlighting every single thing that comes through, as long as it comes through the right people, by the way. That's another thing. Because that you can't just Netflix doesn't have an open submission policy. So you have to get through certain gatekeepers just to get to the point where you can even pitch a show to them. So, it's just, I don't know, man. It's just crazy to me the way that these things are being made.
Yeah, I totally agree. To me, it doesn't logically make any sense. I don't understand, and that's the thing. I honestly don't understand what it was that they thought that they were trying. Because that's the thing. It's like, did they not realize that you just we're just recycling the same story points over and over again? Like, no one's really moving forward. Mary's upset because the other warrior nun, who was her friend, died.
And she's still upset. Nothing resolved
changed.
there either. They haven't resolved anything with that either. She's still just, by the way, she's still just the brooding black girl. That's another thing, too. It's like you say, oh, what, diversity and stuff like that? That's not a stereotype. She's still the angry, brooding black woman. Come on. You know what I mean? This is just bad writing.
Oh, and we've got a comment here from Manasan. Manasan says, I think Lost in Space movie had William Hurt as John Robinson and Matt LeBlanc as Major Don West. You are correct, sir. Those are the two names I could not remember. Thank you for that. Welcome back. It's nice to have you here. And I don't know if you saw it or not, Manasan, but that's what I would compare the Warrior Nun series to, is the Lost in Space TV pilot that they produced around about the same time as they did that movie. I quite enjoy that movie, by the way. That movie has a lot of really fun stuff. It has a lot of wonderful design work. I actually love the design work of that Lost in Space movie. One of the few things I've kept in the studio, because a lot of times I purge things out of the studio and I get rid of things, collectible stuff, whatever, need to make room for something else. I've always kept my Lost in Space robot because I always thought he was really cool. So I still have him. But I used to have the ship, and I had an applause figure that didn't really bend. It was almost like a statue of actually Major Don West, where he's got the armor thing that came over his face and he's got the gun that he assembled. Like, I just love the design work of that movie. It's got some really, really cool design work, in my opinion.
I thought the robot was really interesting, but then I thought it was kind of weird how they disassembled them and then made him look like the original robot. So they kind of tried to have it both ways. Because I thought the new design was actually pretty intimidating and kind of cool. I remember wanting the toy because they had a remote control version of that. But then what they did is, like in the first scene, he blows up. Yeah. He blows up, and then he looks like the original robot, which I love. But it was just kind of like, I don't know. It's a guilty pleasure to me. I mean, I like it, but I see the flaws in that movie as well. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like a guilty pleasure, which of course the original series was as well. Let's be honest. There, it was very campy, very much a rival of Star Trek, and nowhere near regarded as highly. But still, to me, it was kind of a guilty pleasure. The film. I mean, I remember enjoying it. I saw it in the movie theater. You know. Now, Bobby Chambers brings up a question. He says, do you think COVID is calling all the green lights? Maybe rushing content because people are at home? Or was this a trend prior? The green light has nothing to do with COVID. So what we've got actually is the opposite when it comes to COVID in terms of green lighting. Because we're talking about two different things. Because there's actually two parts to your question, right? So we're talking about two different things. As far as green lighting a project right now, it's hard because you don't really know when you're going to actually be filming right now. LA is still shut down. California is back in a complete shutdown right now. As far as I know, you cannot even film in California right now as far as a big production. You can film in other places. You can film in Arizona. There's plenty of places, I think, even in Europe. I know New Zealand, I think Australia, their studios are back up and running. So there are places where you can film, and actually Warrior Nun was filmed in Spain. So as far as green lighting goes, I don't think that has anything to do with COVID. I think that's a different issue. I think that's just the way Netflix does things because they do know content is king. We've talked about that, and I agree with Netflix on that. Content is king, so they churn out a lot of content. They're going into massive debt, churning in all that content when they're making massive revenue, but they're still going into massive debt because they're churning tons of content. And I think that's a trend that started before all this. And I think that's also because of the streaming wars. So that's one part of it. I don't know if you agree with that or not, Dave. I want your input on that. Just on the green lighting. And that's the toy I was talking about.
Yeah.
Does he explode and turn into the other one? Does he break apart?
No, he does not. He just stays as this one. So
now I do want you to take that first part as far as the green lighting. Do you think COVID has affected the way projects are being greenlit? Do you think they're being greenlit more or less? You know, that kind of a thing because of COVID.
I would imagine they're being greenlit less. I think they're trying to get their ducks in a row for what they want to do with a lot of projects, but I don't think there's a lot of anything going on. And you can tell that too, because a lot of the late night talk shows and stuff and whatever, everybody's still shooting from their house. So
right. It looks like
I have been kind of surprised, in all honesty, that none of these shows have actually relocated for temporarily to like a state where they could actually,
like Arizona, which is right next door. You know,
and to be honest with you, I still keep circling the same thing. I've always heard the logic. It's like, well, the talent pool's in LA. That's where all the talent is, and it's like, no, there's talented people other places. If you really wanted, you could relocate a couple people and shoot a show, here if you really wanted. I still don't understand that lot, but anyhow, that's beside the point. But no, I don't think a lot of things are being greenlit right now. I don't know for sure. I don't have any contacts in industry. I could talk to you more about designing and selling T-shirts right now, or drawing and creating comic books. All of those things can still be done in our current situation, I've discovered.
Now, the second part of that question was about whether they're rushing content because people are stuck at home.
No,
I don't. No. Yeah, I don't think they are either. No. Because what I think, if anything, they're pacing the content because they only have so much available right now.
My first story that I want to talk about for pop culture news actually even proves that point, that they are not rushing content. They are sitting on content. Now, Netflix has enough content because they're just doing whatever their original release schedule was. And they have stuff like already produced. They have stuff in the can, ready to go. I've heard as far out as 2023. Now, they may not have the premiere projects that they want to have, but I've been told they have enough content sitting around. They can keep going till 2023 without shooting anything new.
Wow.
Now, Now I'm gonna tell you right now, is Disney Plus? Well, not Disney Plus. Is Disney in the same position? No. Is now I do know for sure that CBS All Access is sitting on content too. So that's what I'm saying. I think actually everyone is trying to pace themselves, like Eric said. I think they're sitting on stuff and they're trying to mark time. They're trying to mark time.
No, there's definitely that COVID effect. no doubt.
I just wanted to say hi, Orville Nation. Oh wait, let me try that again. Hi, Orville Nation.
And he says, "I love my Retro Rogue brothers. We love you too, PJ." He also says he loves Dave's blue lights background. He likes the background you got going there.
Oh, thanks.
It is kind of trippy, isn't it?
Yeah. I'll put this away now. Well, I got to be careful. I put it. If the dogs come in here, they might try and chew it up and put it over here.
Yeah, but I hope we answered your question, Bobby, to the best of our ability as far as what we see, because it's a good question. And I think about that stuff all the time, actually. I just think Netflix has a different way of doing business. And I think all the streaming services, streaming for some reason is against pilots. They're against the old system. So they just want to find properties, throw them out there and see what happens. You know, it'll be 6 episodes, 8 episodes, 10 episodes, and then we'll just see, you know? So,
and Netflix, depending upon what it is, they might be in a position where they're able to sign such a good deal that they can just have the content and, you know, pull it down and put it back up whenever they want. And so for them, maybe it's such a good investment in this content that they're not concerned about having necessarily, like, you know, to actually do like an actual pilot and test it and do all the stuff that normally happens, you know, with the way the network system has always worked. You know, for them, they might be thinking it's like, well, even if it sucks, someone will watch it, so let's just go ahead and buy it. You know,
well,
I mean, who knows?
Also, keep in mind with these shorter seasons, what used to be a full season commitment, right? Now you get 2.5 seasons for that. Think about that. So where it used to have a season that was 22 episodes, 26 episodes, now you have a season that's only 10 episodes. That means actually I can commit to an older version of a full season of content and get like 2.5 seasons of content if that's what I want to do. So that you got to think of it that way too, I think, because I think that's a factor as well. The fact that they have fewer episodes for these streaming shows, it means, hey, I can give a 1 season commitment, but I can get 2 seasons out of this. I can milk this thing. You know what I mean?
And then the plot thickens, because the other thing that people are talking about is the fact that Netflix cuts things off at 3 seasons, it seems like, regardless of reception, quality, or anything else. At 3 seasons, they're pulling the plug. And then when you look at it from a math standpoint, you're like, well, wait a minute. You guys just paid less for 3 seasons, and this has a following and a fan base, and people want to see more of it. Why are you ending it? I'm talking about things like Ozark. I'm talking about things like Dead Like Me. You know, these are all, you know, good shows. I can vouch for those, and like Warrior Nun. For example, if you're watching Warrior Nun and you thought this kind of sucks, but you do like drama, go watch Dead Like Me. That's a great show. I highly recommend Dead Like Me.
Right on. And Bobby does say we're making some great points. And as far as what we were last said, very true. So, Bobby, I hope we're answering your question to the best of our ability.
Yeah. And then I guess Man of Sand is talking with Orville Nation. I think they're talking about Twitter.
That's right. Yeah. And I am still on Twitter. Man of Sand mentions he's not. And he says, I quit Twitter long ago. I don't go on there, which I can totally understand, because a lot of Twitter is a hate fest. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There's a lot of toxic fandom on Twitter. It's just the way it is.
Now that I've got this shirt on to show it off, I keep finding myself trying to do the Picard maneuver.
Right on.
I'll make sure it looks good. I don't know. Anyhow, I feel like I need some rank things or something up here to you know, like the Kirk, you know, like the little triangular.
Yeah, he needs. Yeah,
that's That's the idea of the green. I like that shirt that Kirk used to wear. I mean, it didn't make any sense that no one else wore one, but still, I always thought it was kind of fun. So
I think Scott Bakula got to wear one, didn't he? In
he did.
the Mirror
You are,
Darkly. I think.
yes, you are correct.
With the green shirt. So.
Yeah, he did. That's correct.
My favorite episode of Enterprise. I got a lot of issues with Enterprise. Speaking of shows I have issues with. So, but that's my favorite episode. I really like that episode in the Mirror Darkly.
No, yeah, it was great. It was really great, for sure. So, are we good with Warrior Nun? I have nothing else to say about Warrior.
No, I think we're trying to put it to rest, folks. We just haven't been digging it. It's taken too long to really get anywhere, and we're moving on.
Right,
we're moving on in lots of different ways, right? So.
Yeah, cool. And now I've got the banner. I don't know if you want to put it up. So, all right. So we're going to segue over into pop culture news. You may ask yourself, if you're new to the show, what do they mean by pop culture news? Well, we're going to talk about things that are happening in the world of pop culture news, things that we find interesting, things that we think you, our dear valued viewer, our dear valued listener, might find interesting and worthy of conversation. So, Eric, do you want to go first, or do you mind if I go first? I'm not sure if.
Sorry about that. I was actually trying to cue something, so you please go first.
Okay. First. All right, cool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go first then. Let me go ahead and bring that up. So ignore all the crazy web ads happening here. So this is from Variety, and this is ironically just in time with actually something that Bobby was just asking about. If they are, kind of metering and releasing content slowly, or if they're sitting on content, or what's going on. And I feel like that this proves the point that they're sitting on content. So this is coming from Variety. The story is by Rebecca Rubin, and it says Christopher Nolan's Tenet delays August release. Now, a lot of you may know or be familiar, if you're, I think most of us are movie fans, that Tenet, which is the next Christopher Nolan film, I quite like all of Christopher Nolan's films, I look forward to them, has been delayed. And it's been delayed because of course, obviously the pandemic. Well, it's been delayed 2 times so far, and that's of the second one they said they were going to roll it out. Well, now it's been delayed a 3rd time, but this delay is even a little bit more extreme. So it says Warner Brothers has removed Tenet from its release calendar. So let's just sit on that for a second. Release. The release calendar, it's off it. So that's delivering a big blow on the exhibition industry, which, of course, the movie theaters, at a time when movie theaters had hoped to peg their reopening to the late summer debut of Christopher Nolan's sci-fi thriller. Though necessary, given the mass uncertainty over when cinemas across the globe can safely reopen, the decision further complicates Hollywood's already bumpy plan to revive moviegoing. Tenet was originally scheduled to debut on July 17th, but it was pushed back to July 31st and then August 12th. It's unclear when it will now welcome audiences, but the studio expects to announce a new release date imminently. So you can find this article on Variety. I always encourage you just to go and read it there for yourself. You see all these weird targeted ads that are somehow trying to aim at me, but we're going to ignore those. But yeah, I mean, I assume you'd heard about this, Eric. This was kind of like a big thing, when they basically pulled Tenet from the release schedule altogether. Now, I'm not going to talk about Wonder Woman 84, but there's a lot of speculation about what this means for Wonder Woman 84. Are they still going to go ahead and release that, or are they going to pull Wonder Woman 2? So,
yeah, it's a great question. That really is. And this was sort of the benchmark of what the theaters were waiting for. When you're talking about like AMC, our big actual local chain is Harkins. They were all waiting for something like this. Now, I have to imagine the shutdowns affect this greatly because California is shut down again. Arizona did officially shut down theaters again, at least until the end of the month, even though there was only like 1 theater open. And I'm not talking about the drive-ins, by the way. The drive-ins are the exception to this rule. And, we've talked about that too. It's like at some point, because we're seeing it. I brought it up the last episode. Walmart's going to start doing drive-ins at their stores, use their parking lots to do drive-in movie theaters, and we're seeing this happen more and more and more, where we're having more and more drive-ins pop up. I didn't realize there's a drive-in now in Mesa. There is a non-permanent drive-in now in Scottsdale. So it's like at some point, just guys are gonna have to move on. You know what I mean? So
I wanted to say little bit of house cleaning business weirdly at this point in the show, just because it kind of dovetails into this. So I'm still waiting to ship packages out, and this all connects back. Give me just a second. And I've been having problems with my Epson printer, and I've been trying to repair it. And I've literally spent almost a month trying to fix my Epson printer, because I signed up for this service where I can go into the internet, do all my postage, print out my shipping stuff and everything, and just basically stick it on packages. And then the UPS or whoever, post office, will just pick up at my door. So that basically I don't have to go in the post office anymore, because going in the post office to me just feels like a dodgy prospect right now. It's been really freaking me out. So I've been trying to repair this printer, and then finally I had to give up the ghost and just be like, it's not going to happen. I'm just going to have to go buy another printer. When I just bought another printer, it's a long story. Anyhow, so I went to the Walmart, one of the places I went to see if I could buy a printer. The parking lot, half the parking lot was blocked off by fence, like this fencing. And then it was this weird, like, crane thing sitting out there. And I was like, what in the world are they doing? Why is half of the parking lot blocked off? This makes no sense. Like, it's just weird. Why are they blocking off? Like, they're doing construction. It never even dawned on me. It's because they're going to be doing this movie theater, the drive-in movie theater thing in the parking lot. It never even dawned on me that might be what they're doing. So I think that, honestly, I think I'm beginning to see where maybe they're getting ready for it. So that's funny, because I didn't even clue in on that. We talked about it here on the show. I didn't even clue in on it until you just said that, Eric.
Good business is where you find it, Dave. Good business is where you find it. And yes, yeah. I am comparing Walmart to OCP. That's a deliberate tie-in. Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. It's very interesting. You know, Bobby mentions, he says, Tenet and Ghostbusters. What a bummer. Definitely waiting until theaters can open. And you're right. They're waiting on Ghostbusters as well. Ghostbusters is another one that's being pushed back. And PJ mentions, yeah, outdoor summer theaters are popping up. It's happening. That's the trend right now. And they're most of the content they're putting out there is all legacy content. It's old stuff. We talked about last week, the number one movie in the nation for the third time in its history was Empire Strikes Back. You know, because they've been a lot of places have been showing Empire Strikes Back, and people are going to go watch it because people like to go watch movies, you know. And we're talking about mostly drive-in theaters. There are a few indoor theaters, a few states have them open. But for the most part, we're talking about the drive-ins, and we're talking about drive-ins that are just popping up. You know, people have a parking lot and they're starting to use them because that's all you really need, you know? So, yeah, Amanda Sand said it's an interesting new trend. It really is. And it's something that, to me, if Hollywood had any intelligence, which I don't think they do, they would be popping on this trend and do something with it. But instead, they're just going to throw everybody under the bus.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like I feel like that they could take advantage of what's happening and either use Tenet or use Wonder Woman 1984 in this moment, or even Ghostbusters, for example, or even Top Gun Maverick. Like they could take one of these properties or projects and then just infuse it into what's happening, and try and keep the excitement going and keep For example, we're talking about Comic-Con at home. Comic-Con at home, that's a cool thing. We're broadcasting live from the floor of Comic-Con.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So, that's a cool thing, right? But it's weird because when you think about it, because that's where they usually make all the big movie announcements and stuff. And there's things that are still happening, Right. But in the shadow of that, instead of Warner Brothers being able to tout Wonder Woman 84 and maybe do a little bit of stuff for Tenet, they're pushing it back again. So, and this time Tenet's just coming off the release schedule altogether. That's kind of just giving up the ghost. That's just like kind of going, yeah, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. So let's just take it off the playing board for now. Let's just take it off. And like I said, that's the big thing. People are wondering what this means for Wonder Woman 84. And ironically enough, depending upon when they finish these reshoots and when Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League cut is ready, I would not be shocked. This is me theorizing. I do not have any insider information, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't capitalize on this moment with the Zack Snyder Justice League, roll that movie back out in the middle of what's happening and maybe make it available, at these Walmart drive-ins and whatever. And we could see Justice League become the big budget box office success film that everybody thought it should have been in the first place. In this environment, depending upon when they can finish these reshoots and they can finish these new visual effects, re-release this thing, have it on HBO Go, but then maybe have a limited release either at the drive-ins or in partnership with Walmart at their pop-up drive-ins. Just think about that. Think about how huge that could be. So, I wouldn't be surprised if executives aren't discussing, well, what can we do with what we have? And that Justice League, that new Zack Snyder Justice League cut, that's an awesome thing that Warner Brothers has in their pocket that they could use for more than just HBO Max if they really want.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea. It really is, but it requires Hollywood to play nice, and they're not very good at that. And that's one of the big problems that you're seeing right now. You're not seeing a whole, the irony is what really started all this was Universal's decision that they were going to do Trolls World Tour on VOD and theaters at the same time. This was right before COVID hit. They basically saw the writing on the wall, plus they have their own issues. And they said, hey, you know what? We're going to do Trolls World Tour VOD, and we're going to do it, in the theater at the same time. And then like the next week, theaters were all shut down. They did it like the week before all the theaters shut down. They said this and caused a huge uproar. But the irony is Trolls World Tour did come out in the theaters and VOD at the same time. It was one of the only new movies available at these drive-ins that are open. In fact, I think to this day it's still available at the Glendale Drive-In, which is the only permanent drive-in in my area. They still show it. You know what I mean? So there's an irony there. You know what I mean? Whereas, they kind of started a lot of this thing, this fight that's going on between the theater industry and the movie studios, and these sort of misgivings that have occurred and all that stuff. The irony is, though, that they actually, I think, had the best idea. That's the way to go forward, is to do something like you're saying. Do this Snyder cut in whatever theaters are open, and do it on HBO Max as well. You know what I mean? Maybe have it on HBO Max to debut, and then put it out in the theaters like the week after or something like that. There are different ways to do this. We're in a new world.
Yeah.
You can come up with different models.
And for example, like right now, I know the Marvel fans are kind of jonesing too, just like the DC fans. I consider myself a fan of both. I've been looking forward to New Mutants. Again, New Mutants. There you go. It's finished. It's done. They've been sitting on it forever because they couldn't find a right time to release it. Could you imagine, like, if they did it right, they did a little bit of publicity, a little bit of push, just imagine Justice League and New Mutants, the two big hits of this summer season. So I'm just going to put that out there.
Speaking of New Mutants, we've discussed this. I know somebody has not seen the trailer yet, which it's always kind of problematic a little bit in this format, because we can't do the sound because we'll get shut down immediately if we do the sound. But we do have a trailer reaction. And by the way, this also relates to our Comic-Con coverage, because despite what we talked about before, Marvel is actually participating in a way in Comic-Con at home. So anyway, this is the New Mutants trailer, and Dave told me he hasn't seen it, so I'm going to play it for y'all.
Well, that's Danny Morningstar, obviously. Some of this is footage we've seen before. Of course, I think those of us that have seen the trailer kind of know the setup that the New
Hey, that's
Mutants are
interesting.
based.
Did you notice it still said 20th Century Fox, and
Yep.
20th Century Fox doesn't exist anymore? It's now 20th Century Studios. That's interesting. I
Yeah.
didn't notice that the first time I watched this.
Of course, the setup, they're in a hospital where they're being treated. Again, this also too is going to be the first of these, superhero films and they were specifically taking New Mutants and looking at it as a horror movie. Of course, that's Ran. Ran is actually a werewolf. That's Cannonball. Sam Guthrie. There's darn it, it's Ricard. I think it's Ricardo. Sunspot. There's Colossus' sister, Magic.
April 3rd.
I've been wanting to see this movie for such a long time. And then in the other versions of the trailer, she says, this is basically just a prison. And they're not really being treated. It seems like they might be being experimented on.
Harvested?
Yeah. Some people theorize that this is going to loosely or indirectly connect into a lot of stuff that they were kind of suggesting with some of the later X-Men films, and that Mr. Sinister somehow was involved, which would connect this back into classic X-Men storylines like Inferno, for example, which New Mutants had a presence in Inferno. Of course, Mutant Massacre, a lot of those storylines from that day. Of course, the same thing. Like I said, she's Rain or Ran is basically a werewolf. There's them all together. Sunspot, Cannonball. We got Magic powering up, which is cool. Yeah, this is not too terribly different from the last trailer I saw, Eric. But they've given it, of course, the new release date. So, well, that's cool. I was already looking forward to New Mutants, and really thought that it had a lot more potential than was being kind of realized. Now that's interesting. See that New Mutants Comic-Con at Home trailer? Did you see that one, Eric? If you scroll down.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to find. There we
There's
go.
a link. Yeah, click on that one. Let's see that, because that looks like that's got some new stuff in it. Maybe
it does. This is the new one. That was the
okay,
original
cool.
one.
All right, cool.
And I think you can even see it has the update. See, 20th Century Studios.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay.
This is the new one right here, folks.
The new logo. All right. So again, some slightly different footage, but stuff we have kind of seen. Well, that was kind of new and creepy. That smiley face thing. They were doing that with those weird robots when they did Mutant Massacre in the New Mutant storyline. Oh, there's Magic. That's cool. That's cool. Getting a lot more shots of them using their powers and stuff. That's fun. Oh, wow. That's a cool shot where she's got the sword and she's all powered up. That's cool. All right. So, yeah.
And by the way, that panel that will be happening. So that's July 23rd, 2 p.m. They'll be doing the New Mutants panel for Comic-Con.
Yeah, I would definitely check that out, because that's the thing. They've got so much content for New Mutants that they've been sitting on for quite some time. There's just got to be all kinds of cool stuff that they could release and talk about. So that's cool. That's cool. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to that. I was looking forward to it before. Definitely excited about that.
And even though that was unintentional, I think that actually worked better to show both trailers, because I was trying to just show the Comic-Con trailer, but I hadn't seen the other one. So it's kind of funny. You hadn't seen the new one. I hadn't seen the first one. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So, and plus you kind of get to see, obviously they are recycling some footage and things like that. So, hey, so PJ had a nice comment for you. He says, I swear you guys are my favorites on YouTube. PJ, you're our favorite on YouTube. We got to have a serious talk about getting 50 people in this chat. Seriously, guys, this is a crime. And I'm saying it with love. Says you guys deserve a large audience. And we were actually talking earlier that we had a business meeting yesterday. We were actually talking about that That's why one of the reasons we're talking about changing the format up and splitting the show basically, and having one segment that's focused retro, one focuses new, but where we can always talk about topical news whenever it's happening, and we're a little bit closer to whatever's happening. You know what I mean? So we are talking about that, PJ. If you have any suggestions or anything like that, we're always open to it, because we look up to you as a leader in the broadcasting community. So any advice you have or any collaboration you want to do, I think we have actually kind of talked about maybe doing something with Lower Decks possibly. So we'll see. You know what I mean? So that'd be kind of cool.
No, yeah, for sure. I definitely like to get PJ's opinion on Lower Decks for sure. I'm very curious to talk about it. I'm actually really excited too to talk. Actually, we got coming up here pretty soon. I think Eric's already mentioned it. We're going to be talking about the Star Trek animated series, the Filmation series. I always loved that series as a kid. Even if you're not a big fan of the animation style, you can literally just have it on in the background and just have the sound playing, and it's like a really awesome, like third, like additional season of Star Trek, as if it was like a radio play or a radio drama, because they got so much of the original cast back and they're all there. You know what I mean? It's really cool. So excited to talk about Chris's Star Trek animated series as well.
And he did say love to, in terms of doing some collaborations. So yeah, we definitely need to explore that possibility more and get that done.
yeah, for sure.
So,
are we good to move on to another story?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, cool. If you wouldn't mind sharing my screen. So here, this is Mashable, but you can actually find it in a lot of different sites. It's being reported in a lot of different places. Basically, this is the Transformers and Back to the Future collide in a new toy and a comic crossover. Now, the reason I picked this particular story instead of some of the others is because I didn't realize they were doing a toy that tied into this. I'd heard about the toy and I'd heard about the comic series, but I didn't realize that they were meant to actually go together. Now, this is by Adam Rosenberg. This is actually, obviously, this is an older story, but I've seen more stuff breaking recently about this, and I thought it was interesting. So this is Back to the Future, turns 35 on July 3rd, and as part of the celebration, we're getting an epic crossover. Now, I don't even know, maybe this has already come out, but I was just seeing new stuff about this actually just recently. So maybe I'm a little behind the times of this, but I thought it was interesting. So there's a new Transformers action figure coming, appropriate named Gigawatt, and his vehicle form is none other than Doc Brown's flying DeLorean time machine. And there's some fun details on this thing. So these take a closer look. They've got some really cool photos here. You can see this all on Mashable, but it's a DeLorean that transforms into a transformer called Gigawatt. You can see the flux capacitor. We got the dates right here. That's really cool. But then also, too, there is a comic book that actually ties into this, which I thought was cool. But yeah, so they've got the toy here, and they've got the comic book series. So, okay, now I got a little error going on here. But anyhow, I thought this was interesting. I thought this was kind of fun. I had seen more stories breaking about the comic, and I didn't realize there was a toy that actually went with it. And I thought this was really kind of fun. Had you heard about this, Eric?
Not at all. That's why I kind of blew it up there, because I was actually looking at it myself and trying to take a closer look. That's really cool, especially the comic series. Is the comic out yet, or do you know when the comic's coming out?
Well, see, that's the thing. I was seeing a lot of breaking news actually about the comic book, that it was either out or had just come out. Let me check that on my phone. I apologize, everyone. I thought, I'll be honest with you, I picked this one because it had the toy too. And I thought it was fun how they all tied together. And I didn't realize that the toy news is actually kind of old. And actually okay, I'm pulling this up here real quick because I had done, let's see here. When is the comic coming out? I wonder if it's already out. This could all be old news, everyone. My apologies. I thought this was just, I hadn't heard anything about it. So to me, it was totally.
I hadn't either. I had heard nothing about this, the toy or the comic book. I had no idea this was even a thing.
A lot of more coverage here. I'm finding a lot of stuff about the toy. Let's see. They're going to be because
You're
I thought
telling me there's not a lot of coverage of the comic book? You're telling me that there's not a lot of media coverage of that? I am shocked. I am absolutely shocked. How is that even possible?
Well, there you go, folks. I'm trying. I'm trying to get because I thought that. Here we go. Comic book. Okay. All right. Hold on. All right. Come on. Come on. I know it's here. Yep. Okay. So this is what it is. Back to the Future Transformers crossover revealed. Okay, here we go. Here's because there was a story on CBR. 4-issue miniseries crosses over the Transformers Back to the Future. IDW published an announcement, an all new crossover between Okay, yes, we got that. And this release, okay, so this press release for the comic series just basically just broke today. So that's why I thought this was new. And I didn't. So apparently the toy's been out for a while, or at least the theoretical possibility to order the toy has been available. But official press release from IDW that came out today. Today. Says two of the greatest science fiction franchises 1980s will collide this fall. So it's coming up. It's not out yet. In an all-new comic book crossover event, Transformers Back to the Future, written by Kavan Scott, best-selling author and writer of IDW's Star Wars Adventures, and illustrated by Juan Samu. It looks like Marvel Action Black Panther. The 4-issue miniseries will debut in October from IDW Publishing. So this October. In the debut issue, Marty McFly returns from the adventure of a lifetime to a new Better Hill Valley. That is until Marty and his friend Doc Brown's time machine attracts the attention of the Decepticons. With one small mistake, Marty finds himself once again thrust into action to unravel a Decepticon plot in the past, present, and the future. Now with the help of a new converting time machine, the Autobot called Gigawatt.
Interesting.
So that sounds fun. So that
does sound fun. That sounds like an interesting crossover right there.
So if it's in October, I think it might be something fun actually to maybe look at trying to cover actually for the show. So I'll keep an eye out for it. If you'll keep an eye out for it, Eric, and maybe we'll review the Transformers Back to the Future crossover comic. I think that would be fun.
Yeah, that sounds fun. That sounds like a good idea there.
Cool. So that is my last story for pop culture for this week. Do you have anything else for pop culture?
No, I just want to focus on Comic-Con. In fact, my pop culture was part of Comic-Con, so because it was the Mutants Comic-Con trailer. So,
all right, cool. Let me pull the banner up, and then we can segue over into streaming horrors.
Now that's a Freudian slip if I ever heard one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. All right. Okay. All right. So we're going to segue over into streaming wars. So you may be asking yourself, if you're new to the show, what do we mean by streaming wars? Well, in streaming wars, we're talking about all the things happening in the world of streaming video. Specifically, a lot of those fun services that a lot of us have subscribed to. Whether you want to talk about Hulu, whether you want to talk about Netflix, or if you want to talk about some of the newer ones like the Peacock, because the Peacock has finally emerged. And the plumes of the feather are not as brightly colored as we all thought. But we'll get to that. But also, too, other things such as DC Universe, basically anything and everything happening in the world of streaming wars that we think you, our dear valued viewer, our dear valued listener, might find interesting and worthy of discussion. So tell me, Eric, what do you have up first for this episode's edition of the Streaming Wars?
Well, I'm going to get right into what happened to our retro review this week. So last week, I actually went on the Peacock website to see what it is that we could watch because I wasn't quite sure what was going to be available, especially on the free side, because on this channel, we love to promote free content. We love to promote Tubi because they're free. We love to promote Crackle because they're free. We love to promote Pluto TV. In fact, Pluto TV is getting next gen. You heard it on here. We talked about that story. We love to promote free content. Peacock has a free tier. We thought, hey, let's go on there. We did it last week. We went on there. We looked at some stuff, and we decided we were going to review End of Days. Okay, so some of you may know, but my preference in terms of actually streaming is I use my PlayStation 4. Because I like to watch on my big screen TV in my living room. I like to sit down in my lazy boy, and I like to watch movies that way. I don't like to watch it like this. Right now I'm on my laptop. That's not how I like to watch movies. I definitely don't like to watch it on this. I don't like to watch on a tiny little screen. I don't like to watch movies like that. My other option, by the way, for stuff that's not available on PlayStation 4 is I can use my Chromecast, and I can cast it from my phone or even from this computer, and then I can watch it on my big screen TV upstairs. It has the Chromecast. So I have that other option. Guess what, folks? Neither of those options works on Peacock right now. So Peacock does not have a PlayStation 4 app, even though it was supposed to come out on Monday. It's still not out. And then the casting, if you have it on your phone, you try to cast it, it doesn't work with the first generation Chromecast. Can you believe that? It doesn't work with the first generation Chromecast. You have to have one of the new Chromecasts. So that's my streaming wars thing. And I am at war with them right now because I'm like, how can you do this? You had all this time to prepare. You had a huge soft launch. It was like 2 months ago that the Xfinity or whatever, Comcast subscribers, those people have had access to Peacock this entire time. And you can't get it on the PlayStation 4, and you can't get it to work with a first generation Chromecast. James Stones mentions, streaming horrors is a very particular subgenre of video, Dave. Well, streaming horrors is also kind of what's going on right now with some of these streaming services. They're selling themselves, right? And they're not giving us a quality project. So I'm a little upset at the Peacock right now. And I know, Dave, you had a similar experience.
Yeah, I actually have one of the newer model Chromecasts, and I had all kinds of issues trying to stream it. And then eventually I just gave up. I was having like weird sort of like timing skipping problems. So what happened is it would go to a commercial, and then when it would come out of the commercial, it would speed up, like, and it would like slow down and catch up, but you'd miss something. And then I would try to go back. I'm like going, well, hell, how much of the conversation did I miss? Is it important? And I'd try to basically scroll back, and then I get the freaking commercial again. So that was really frustrating. So I decided, well, I'll just watch it on my phone. Now, my problem is I have a Samsung phone and I have a Samsung smart television. Although sometimes with what they're doing with the streaming content, my television seems, I wouldn't know if I clarify it as smart. But anyhow, so I decided, well, I'll just look at it on the phone. So it's watching on the phone. I was having a similar and also slightly different weird timing problems on the phone, where it was skipping and kind of all kinds of random things. And I'd have it, basically in my Wi-Fi network, and I was like, okay, well, this is whatever. Let me try to just do it on the 3G on the Sprint. Let me turn, my network off. Let's see if it streams better there, even though it'll probably do lower quality. Still having the same problem. So I had all kinds of problems with all my Samsung and the Chromecast. I couldn't get really any of it to really work right. And then finally I decided, well, I'll break down. I'll just put the Peacock on the Samsung TV. Guess what? I couldn't find it available to put the app on the TV to watch it through the TV either. Now, this is not the first time this has happened, DC Universe. So and that was out of Freudian slip. Let me say it again. It's not the first time this has happened, DC Universe. Still mad about that. And I'm like, why isn't it available for Samsung? I understand you see certain things. It's like, oh, well, that's a niche market. That's blah, 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 whatever. How many people own Samsung smart televisions? And I can't get the app to download for my television. Like, it's not available in the little app marketplace for me to put on my television. I don't understand it. I don't understand. You'd think with all the time to figure this stuff out, you'd think it'd be a little bit better by the time they get ready to roll it out. So I'm sure they'll fix this stuff. They always do. They always update things. They fix things, whatever. But I found it to be particularly annoying. And then Eric reached out to me and was expressing some of his things. I was like, you know what? I'm fine to not finish End of Days because I literally started End of Days over twice, trying to watch it all the way through because of all the problems I was having. And then I wasn't really enjoying it, and I wasn't really sure. It's like, well, is this a commentary on End of Days, which on Rotten Tomatoes has an 11% rating? Is it really that bad? Or is it just the fact that I can't get the stupid thing to stream right to really have a proper opinion about it in the first place? So there you go. We were going to do End of Days. We didn't do it because Peacock was not playing nice.
That's right. And I'm just saying, at this point in the game, and Peacock's coming in basically after all the other big players have already made their debut. Come on, Peacock. Come on, Universal. Get your act together. Seriously. You know, I don't understand it. They had plenty of time because they had all this time that they were doing this already with the cellular subscribers. So to me, there's just no excuse. There's just no excuse.
And it goes to emphasize how good a job, in my mind, Disney did with their app and their streaming service. It works really great. It looks great. The interface is great. It's easy to find stuff. Like, it works with my television really great. It works with my phone really good. Like, I there was a little bit of sketchiness there at launch, but other than that, once I got it figured out, at least on my end anyway, all the different ways I wanted to view it, it worked. I could cast with it. And I could cast to an older Chromecast and a newer Chromecast. I didn't have any issues at all, So
I will say on the PlayStation 4, the Disney Plus app to this day still has problems where what happens, it'll freeze, the audio keeps going, and the picture doesn't keep going. To this day, it still has that problem.
Well, and it's like, here lately, I've been having all kinds of problems with CBS All Access on the television. I don't know. I keep thinking, it's like, do I need to update something on my Samsung television? But everything appears to be up to date. So I don't understand what the deal is. But I've had all kinds of issues lately with CBS All Access too. And that's the thing. I keep thinking, it's like, shouldn't you guys be fixing this stuff? And then I mentioned this before on the show. And again, these are the problems I'm having. This is just my opinion of the problems because I don't like it because it's annoying. But this page does not reflect the views of Retro Rogues Live or any affiliated, blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, so the point being is that I even tried, they have a little service email. You can report it and then send the service email in. And that basically bounces back all the time. Failed to deliver. So obviously no one's checking that friggin' email to fix anything that's wrong. So I don't know. There you go.
No, it's weird. I guess it just shows you that how much Netflix does have their act together and figured this out, and a lot of these other players just haven't. They just haven't.
Well, and even too, like, you look at YouTube. I never have any problems with YouTube. My problems with YouTube have to do with administrative decisions and whatever. Right. I mean, but as far as how the actual service works, like when I go on there to watch something, I never have any problems. Never have any problems of any kind. Yeah. I don't either. And it's the same thing with Netflix. Like, I'll try to watch Star Trek on my CBS All Access because they're the home of Star Trek. And I'll try to watch it over there. I have all kinds of streaming problems. I get frustrated. I give up, and I just go watch Star Trek over on Netflix.
Right.
And it's like, well, why in the hell do I have CBS? Oh, that's right. I need it because we're going to be doing Lower Decks. But you know what I'm saying?
And the animated series. Netflix doesn't have the animated series anymore either.
Yeah, luckily enough, I own that on DVD, so I'm good.
Well, there you go then. There you go. There's always you can always just go old school. You can always go retro with the Retro Rogues, right?
That's right. I should write that down. Retro with the Retro Rogues. That sounds like something good for a shirt. All right, so let me pull up because I have just one streaming wars story. I mean, I feel like in a weird way, like some of the stuff we were talking about with Tenon and stuff, kind of segues into that to an extent. So this is something actually that Eric and I were actually talking about. Eric mentioned we had a business meeting yesterday. Okay, here we go. And so this kind of dovetails into that. So, and then again, please ignore all the annoying pop-up ads. So this is over Gizmodo, but I've seen this reported a lot of different places. And this is by Alex Krantz. Now, this is sort of an opinion piece, okay, but you can read it over there at Gizmodo. It says, one of the best streaming services is dying, and I'm bummed. So I'm going to read this a little bit. I'm going to talk about the original news story I saw that broke yesterday, and then we'll just kind of talk about it here just real briefly. So it says, DC Universe's excellent $75 a year link subscription is reportedly dead. New subscribers will be limited to only the monthly $8 plan, which averages about $21 more annually than the defunct annual plan. It's a major bummer and another significant hint that DC Universe, and this is again his opinion, one of the absolute best deals in streaming, is headed to wherever superheroes go when they die before they're inevitably resurrected 3 years later for a multi-issue crossover event that makes no sense. Well, that's true. When the DC Comics-specific Warner Brothers streaming service launched in late 2018, it seemed like a shoddy cash grab, a way to make more buck off the same kind of comic fans who buy multiple variants of a cover or 3 different releases of a movie. But over 2019, it started to rapidly improve. It has a small library of movies and shows that only a true nerd could love, such as the Shazam live-action series, where they're in the Winnebago. Like, they actually went in and restored all the negatives for those, which are crazy. And it looks really good. Sounds really good, too. I highly recommend it, actually, if you have DC Universe, which you better go get on this right away, it sounds like. It had a small library of movies and shows only a true nerd could love, as well as the addition of legitimately fantastic original programming shows like Doom Patrol, Harley Quinn, and Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing was awesome. Then they were so entertaining, they almost made the service feel like it was worth it. But the recent secret weapon of DC Universe, and the reason I've been subscribing since early 2019, and this is the big selling point. We brought this up on the show, and I talked about this, and I wondered, is Warner Brothers going to have the sense to take this amazing thing that they should not get rid of and somehow roll it into HBO Max? This is the big thing that they should have been capitalizing on, that should be on HBO Max, that we all know now. We now know now is not a part of it. And this is the real travesty. Since early 2019 is the massive library of comics that are free to read. This is the reason to have DC Universe. And I can tell you that because I have professional friends in the industry. I have friends that are just fans of DC Comics. All of them still have the DC Universe app, not for Swamp Thing, not for Harley Quinn, not for any other shows. The reason they still have it is because of all the comics that you can read actually on the service. And there's even an additional wrinkle that doesn't really fit in with streaming wars I'm going to mention right after I finish this. And I'm going to recommend you go check this out. And if you're curious of the DC Universe app at all, I recommend go check it out because it sounds like there's something may be happening soon. So not just fairly recent stuff, but a lot of books that are prohibitively expensive on Comixology or just not available digitally. Jack Kirby's entire Fourth World run is on DC Universe. So is Legion of Superheroes. And he says, I spent 3 weeks flying back and forth from San Francisco for work while consuming Alan Moore's entire Swamp Thing run on the DC Universe app on my iPad. This is the reason to have DC Universe, folks. This is the whole, for me, that was the big selling point. That was the thing that was amazing. I actually had people who were curious about my work, and I could tell them you could read everything I've ever worked on at DC Comics on the DC Universe app. It's all on there, all of it. And I kind of feel sad to realize that the DC Universe app, with the cancellation of the annual subscription plan, might be signaling something that might be getting ready to happen, because we know Doom Patrol Season 2, HBO Max, it's going there. There's a lot of rumors that Swamp Thing may actually make the jump from the DC Universe app directly to CW. Whether that actually happens or not, I don't know. Stargirl, which was supposed to be exclusive to DC Universe app, I think it's either on CW or going to be coming to CW, I forget. But anyhow, the shows are going to move to HBO Max. The shows are going to move to something else. And the real shame here is I think the comics content, this amazing library, I think this might be the thing that's going away. because I don't see any interest to take this content, which is a huge selling point and could be amazing, to continue as a part and have it be moved over to the HBO Go. I think it might just be going away. Now, that's just my theory. That's just my unfortunate opinion based off what I'm reading in the tea leaves. But, that's the real shame. I think if the DC Universe app does go away, they've already ended a lot of their silly shows they were doing with all those people. I forget who they all are now. Anyhow, they had these little shows where they would come out and be like, look at all this awesome DC stuff. Awesome DC stuff. And I thought it was weird because I felt like they should have just partnered with a lot of already existing YouTube and shows and podcasts and things that already have an established fan base. I don't know why they didn't do that, because I felt like that was a real miss. But they've already ended all those shows too. Now the annual subscription service is going away. And I feel like the writing's on the wall. But we'll see. So tell me, Eric, what do you think about this?
Well, this is something that you've been kind of predicting since the beginning, since we even started doing our Streaming Wars coverage. You always said that you thought DC Universe was going to be the first casualty. Of course, we've made arguments that the first casualties already happened, depending on your perspective of things. But YouTube Red, for instance, that's pretty much gone. But there already have been casualties of the Streaming Wars. But to me, ever since HBO Max started and I saw what's on HBO Max, because I get HBO Max for free because I have AT&T, I just can't. I keep feeling like the AT&T is competing against itself, and they got to figure this out. So they got to go one of two paths. They got to either make DC Universe more distinctive, maybe emphasize the comics more, or they just got to get rid of it and give all that video content to HBO Max, because it's just like I don't see the point of rotating content from DC Universe and HBO Max. Having two of your subdivisions competing against each other makes absolutely no sense to me. Now, one thing we did cover before was HBO Max is doing a comic. They are doing a comic with DC with their own characters. It's like HBO to the max. We actually talked about that. So I do think that there is a possibility still that rather than take any of this content away, it'll just all go to HBO Max, which is probably where it should be in the first place right now at this point. If that's your main brand, you just got to make a decision.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thing. I just want to see the comics library. I want to see that continue to exist. Maybe
remember they are doing a comic. HBO Max is doing a comic,
right? So. And I kept thinking it's like maybe there's just a tab. When you're in HBO Max, there's a tab. It just says DC Universe. They could reuse a logo, and you click on it, and maybe it has the library of content there. Like the comic stuff specifically. The Shazam show, obviously it makes sense, the one that they actually spent the money to restore the negatives and everything. Obviously that can just fold into the content of HBO Max. For those people who are curious to search that out and watch it. It'll get buried there, but at least it has a place to go. The comics content, because that's the other thing. Like for the longest time, Marvel had their own digital service. They've had that for a very, very long time, actually. They used to make certain issues available actually through that service when you would buy their comics or have a subscription. And then you could do like a monthly subscription to that service as well. And that predates Comixology and a lot of these other things. Like they used to have a lot of independent services used to exist, like things like Drive-In Comics. Talk about the Drive-In thing. There used to be one called Drive-In Comics. There used to be all these different digital options and alternatives for reading comics digitally that have been around that predate, obviously, Comixology. Comixology is the big one that's sort of weathered the storm. That's sort of like your Coke, your Pepsi, your whatever, branded, digital comics service, obviously, because it's part of Amazon. But, that's kind of the thing. And Comixology has their unlimited service, which was like the Marvel Unlimited service. But the Marvel Unlimited service actually just recently went away, too. And that's the thing. It's like the Marvel Unlimited service went away. Not all the content was available on Marvel Unlimited. You can't read all of that on Comixology Unlimited. It's not, what I mean? It's not a one for one. It's not like they turned one off and the other one, like all that content just went over there and it's not a part of that service. A lot of that content's just gone or it's behind an additional paywall now.
Right.
So that's kind of my thing. It's like, is that what's going to happen here? I don't know. It's like sometimes
I wouldn't be surprised if you won't see an announcement at DC Fandom that something might happen there. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be surprised if you'll hear something. You'll get some sort of definitive answer one way or the other, or it's some indication of which way they're going.
Right. Well, interesting. We do have a comment, actually, if you want to put it up. John, hi, John, if you're still watching. John says, Keanu Reeves launches co-created, I don't know how to pronounce that, comic book series.
Is this
it's a sound effect. It says, will we be talking about it in the future? I did read that announcement that they were launching that series. I haven't delved too far into it, John, to be honest. But as we always say, whenever someone in the Rogues Gallery, one of our viewers, comes on and says, hey, what about this? We'll take a look at it and we'll see. So I will give it an additional look and I'll run it by Eric and see what he thinks. And maybe we will cover it in a future episode. I can't speak definitively right now because, to be completely honest, John, I read the announcement that it didn't really hold my interest. I was like, okay, all right. Carrie's doing a comic. I did hear some people said that they liked it more than they expected, that they were a little surprised by it. So I will go in and look into it and delve a little bit deeper and see what people are thinking, and then I'll run it by Eric and be like, hey, what about this? What about that? And then we'll see if we can cover it on a future episode. So
it's the very first I've heard of it. The first question on my mind is where can I get it? Can I get it at my local comic book store? Because I am a physical guy. I don't like to do digital comics. That's just me. So that would be my first question, because I haven't heard about this project. So it does interest me, and I would definitely give it a shot. I'm always glad to pick up at least one comic and take a look at it and see what I think, because I like to support the industry. And if I can find something new and an excuse to actually get something new, I'll take it. So I'll take a look and see if it's out there and if it's something that I'm interested in.
I do think it was part of a physical release too. It wasn't just a digital only. I think the only thing we've actually talked about in this segment right now that I think is digital only is that HBO to the max thing. I don't think maybe that's going to be available physically or not. I'll be honest with you, that I have no interest in at all. Like none. And I love Atari Force, man. I got an original Atari Force page by the man himself, Garcia Lopez, right here, staring me in the face. I love this thing. I love Atari Force. I have no interest in the HBO Max thing.
But the thing with that, I think it's HBO to the max. I think is what the comics are called. It's like I still say, and I said it when we did our coverage originally. It's like, why not just use Superman and Batman for your HBO to the max? Campaign.
Right.
That's the thing where I'm like, I got to look it up who the head of AT&T is. I start calling him out and saying, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like what is going on there that you're not allowing your companies to play nice with each other? It's like, yeah, DC's like, sure, we'll make a comic for you with all new characters. It's like, why? Use the characters that everybody wants to see. It's mind-boggling to me. Although the thing that I mentioned was it could be that it's actually like a soft release for a series that HBO Max wants to do. Then I could kind of see it. They say, hey, DC, can you guys do a comic for us? Because we're thinking about doing this. Want to see what the response is before we actually do the series. That's not a bad model, because that's a model that's being done on Hollywood all the time. Somebody does a comic, if the comic seems to resonate, or if the comic seems like it's good, then you do a show, you do a movie. I could see that model. That's the way that DC and HBO Max should be playing. That's exactly the kind of thing they should be doing.
Right. And along those same lines, not that last point, but I will echo and reiterate what you're saying, Eric, because in the old days, Superman and Batman and Spider-Man, Incredible Hulk and everybody, they were good enough to sell fruit pies and cupcakes, all those fun Hostess products. Like, why not? Why not just have them come out and shill for the max? Why not?
Shill for them. I like it.
Shill for the max.
Shill to the max. See?
And
hey, that's free advice out there. That's free advice, AT&T, right there. Shill to the max.
Shill to the max. It's funny, too, because the Janimal, Jan Mark Quisenbeing, who was the host of the retrospective show back in the day. Jen and I actually did a comic called Dark Meat, which is actually about a chicken who mistakenly believes he's Batman. That comic is actually an industry commentary. It's actually a commentary on the industry and the idea of shilling and being a corporate puppet, actually, of all things. I think a lot of people, I don't know if they read it or got it, but anyhow, so when I say shill to the max, I'm actually also calling out Dark Meat at the same time. So
Right on. Right on.
because I
It's
do believe
always
in
good to
shill.
plug your own stuff. We do that all the time on this program.
Well, why
John
not?
also clarifies the release date for a Keanu Reeves comic is October of this year for the first of 12.
Wow,
That's kind of
that's quite a
interesting. So they're
commitment.
actually doing, a full year of issues. That's interesting. That is some good information, John. Thank you about that. And Bobby makes the obvious, the obvious, right? If it's a hit, he's got a new movie role waiting for him.
Yeah,
I guarantee you that's in Keanu Reeves' mind. I guarantee you, because that is a great way to pitch a project. Do a comic on it. It's a great way to do it. It's much. I can tell you from doing both. It's much harder to make a film in terms of budget and all that kind of stuff, and also access to talent. I mean, you'd be amazed how easy it is to get amazing talent. When it comes to comics, as opposed to trying to get, like, say, Keanu Reeves to be in your movie. It's just night and day. I'll say it with absolutely, like, Dave is like gold. I mean, he's worked at Marvel, he's worked at DC. We're friends. We do a show together. This is literally how easy it is. You know what I mean? In terms to get these kinds of connections. But in the film world, getting like Tom Cruise or Keanu Reeves to do your stuff, that's a little more problematic, folks. It's a little more problematic.
that's a good way to put it. So do you have anything else for Streaming Wars?
No, I'm like I said, I pretty much am ready to go. I mean, we've been here on the floor of Comic-Con this entire time, and we're kind of like trying to check things out and see what's going on, right?
Yeah, we're wandering around. We're staring at all the fun booths. There's probably obviously some booth babes here and there too. That whole thing that just encompasses Comic-Con. So there you go. So yeah, let's just go ahead. We're going to segue over into our next segment. I'll set it up here just real quick. So now we're going to be talking about Comic-Con. It's going to be our last topic of the evening. We're going to be sharing personal stories. We're going to be talking about experiences, and then Eric's going to preview to an extent a little bit of what Comic-Con International, or formerly known as San Diego Comic-Con, or what most of us still call San Diego Comic-Con, is doing with their Comic-Con at home, because they're still trying to have an event, even though obviously they're not able to actually have their normal Comic-Con event. So I'm going to let Eric kind of drive here for a little bit, and then I'll just kind of come in and chime in kind of here and there. I do have some stories to share, and I did pull a few things off to the side here to show actually while we talk about it too. So why don't you just go ahead and take it away, Eric?
So obviously, I have the page up here for Comic-Con at home, and as we're talking about this stuff, I thought it would be fun to just go into what is Comic-Con at home. What are they actually doing? A lot of folks may not even understand how this works. I can tell you right off the bat, it's a lot of YouTube videos, and they've already started them. In fact, they started, I think, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time is when the first panel started to drop. So we're definitely going to get into the Comic-Con coverage of what to kind of, anticipate. I've been checking out the site quite a bit, and I want to check it out with the Rogues Gallery and with Dave, because I don't think Dave has really checked out the site very much either. But we've got to start somewhere, and we have a lot of stories about Comic-Con. Dave and I, we were just talking off the air. It's been a while since either one of us attended San Diego Comic-Con. And I should specify that because there are a lot of other Comic-Cons. Well, lest San Diego tried to make it not so. There's all that legal problem with the word Comic-Con. But we won't get into that right now. We're going to try to be positive, right? We're going to try to put a positive spin on this right now. But Dave and I both have a long history with San Diego Comic-Con. And I thought it would be a lot of fun, like I said, to kind of start in the past and tell you what some of our experience was, you know? So I started looking for all my my passes, and I wanted to kind of do like the Olympian thing where you have like all your medals. I could only find 3. So I've got 3 of my passes over here. Here, let me put myself on camera a little bit more here. So I've got 3 of my passes here. I don't know if you can see them all that well, but these are, I did attend the last few years as a professional. I actually started out as an exhibitor. That was how I started out at San Diego Comic-Con. I started out as an exhibitor, which is what led to me being able to be there as a professional, because I started out going there to basically promote and then eventually sell my comic books that I was doing at the time. And that's a big reason why Dave and I started getting into contact. That whole situation evolved because eventually I became a staff member for the Phoenix Comic-Con. And as a staff member for Phoenix Comic-Con, I would go to Comic-Con to find talent. So I actually talked to so many celebrities, so many people, because I would invite them to the show. And I met a lot of people that way. And so, it's funny because, Dave and I would kind of run into each other at both conventions. Like we would run into each other at Phoenix Comic-Con, then we'd run into each other in San Diego, and we wouldn't necessarily spend a lot of time in between. And that was like for years we were doing that, where it was going kind of back and forth like that. And so John has a question. He says, has San Diego Comic-Con always been popular? If not, when did it become so popular? That is a great question about the history of San Diego Comic-Con that I'm not sure I can totally answer, but I can give you my theory. I think when it really started to pick up was 1976, because that was the year George Lucas actually previewed Star Wars before anybody knew what Star Wars was. And San Diego Comic-Con has always kind of pushed that basically we've had Star Wars before Star Wars was even a thing. That's part of the history that they're very proud of, is like, we had it in 76. And it's like, but it came out in 77. No, we had it in 76 because George Lucas came down here and actually tried to get some buzz. So it's kind of funny when people think about San Diego Comic-Con, one of the big debates is about, is it really a Comic-Con anymore? Well, since basically 1976, it's always had this big film element as well. Now, it didn't get like taken over by the film industry the way I think it has been, in the last few years, probably the last decade, really, until now. But there's always been that connection between film and comics. Dave, do you have a comment on that as far as the history of San Diego Comic-Con? Do you think it was always big, or what moment do you think really pushed it over?
All right, so I'm actually gonna reference and I'm going to show a couple different things here just real quick, and specifically addressing John's question. So this was released several years ago. I don't know if you can still get a copy of it or not, but this is Comic-Con, and it's 40 years of artists, writers, fans, and friends. This was basically sort of like a book celebrating the history of San Diego Comic-Con. I actually bought this at San Diego Comic-Con the year that it came out. And the chapter I want to show, which is ironic enough, the chapter I want to show here is actually on the 1990s. I'm always talking about the 1990s on this show. I know a lot of people like to bag on the 90s and that era for comics for a lot of different reasons. And I keep telling everyone, you don't understand. The 90s were a new golden age for comic and the comic industry. And that's when things really started to change. Because you have to, and it's weird because I think a lot of people that aren't too well versed in the history of comics they're probably not aware of the Wortham trials. They're not aware of the book, The Seduction of the Innocent. They're not aware of how comics were viewed for a very long time in the wake of the dust-up that EC Comics actually created with a lot of their horror comics that actually came out in the late 40s and 50s. Now, for people that are curious about that, who wanted to have a more interesting, more well-rounded sort of understanding about how the comic industry has evolved over the years, I highly recommend, actually on Amazon Prime, there's a documentary called Comic Book Confidential. They actually recently re-released that on Amazon Prime. It's a free watch. And it is a really, really interesting documentary. And it actually talks about a lot about what was going on during that period. And they actually have some footage actually from the Wortham trials, and where the establishment of the Comics Code Authority actually comes from. Back in, right now we're so far removed from it, a lot of people don't remember, but there used to be a Comics Code Authority, and they actually basically censored comic books. For the longest time, Marvel couldn't even use the term zombie in their comic books because there were certain things that were just outlawed. That's why in the late 70s, when a lot of that stuff started to go away, you had such an explosion of horror comics out of Marvel, when you're talking about Tomb of Dracula, Werewolf by Night. All of those comics kind of come out of a lessening of the restrictions that were enforced because of the code. Now, so I recommend check out Comics On. It's a Comic Book Confidential. And if you're interested in the history of comics, and that was actually produced by Charles Lippincott. Charles Lippincott has a long association with Comic-Con, specifically San Diego Comic-Con, Comic-Con International. And actually, if you watch Empire of Dreams, which is a really great documentary about Star Wars, they talk about the partnership that Lucasfilm formed with Charles Lippincott that helped to bring Star Wars to San Diego Comic-Con back in the day. A lot of these things are really super connected, but that documentary is very, very interesting, and can give you a more well-rounded view of the history of the comic industry. But what I want to do is I want to mention here, I'm going to read just a little bit out of this because I think it directly addresses the question. It says, the 1990s were boom years for Comic-Con. Attendance nearly quadrupled, going from 13,000 in 1990 to more than 48,000 in 1999. Fortunately, the city of San Diego had just built a brand new convention center, and Comic-Con moved there in 1991 after one last year at CPAC. Now, the move to that convention center, that was a big deal. Now, what's interesting is they talk about the 1990s. I think the 1990s are when things begin to change. I don't think that was when the huge explosion happened, but I do think that's when things began to change. And it's so funny because right here they have reproduced the artwork from the one of the program books. Guess what was the first year that I attended San Diego Comic-Con? This is my souvenir book from that year. This is from 1993. This is the same artwork, but this is my original one that I actually got at the convention. This was the first time that I went to Comic-Con International. This same year, I was lucky enough to meet some very important and influential people for me. Specifically, this was the first time that I got to meet the late, great Will Eisner. And this is also the time that I had the opportunity to actually talk to Scott McCloud and actually Mike Mignola. And Scott McCloud actually signed my Understanding Comics, which at that time was a brand new book that had just come out. And I was completely enamored with it. Now it's actually used to teach about comic books and comic book sequential storytelling. It's actually used to teach in universities, which is just crazy to me. But so I'm going to tell you that I think the 90s were when things really began to change for Comic-Con International. And I think it's probably around the time I would be willing to bet you probably either the first X-Men movie or probably by around the time that the first Iron Man movie hit, that's when the really huge explosion began to happen. In terms of attendance, because that's when they took the movie integration that had been going on all that time, and it went further and further and got deeper and deeper. Because I was there at Comic-Con all those years, and I remember the first couple years that my wife and I went, you could get into Hall H and it wasn't a big deal to go and just grab a seat. And then by the time that the Iron Man movies were hitting, people were camping out just to sit in Hall H. And then literally the next year after that, that's where you couldn't get into almost any of the panel rooms without a wait. There used to be there's all kinds of panel programming that goes on at Comic-Con. And there used to be a time when just to get off your feet and have somewhere to sit, you go just find a room where there was a couple of chairs and you would just sit there and get off your feet. Maybe you take a look at a couple things that you've got. I mean, you wouldn't talk because you wouldn't want to disturb the people that are having the panel, but you might catch the back end or a little bit of a panel on animation or anime or whatever because maybe there was an open seat. Well, a few years after that first Iron Man movie came out, you were waiting in line to get in to see any panel. And then all of a sudden, you just couldn't find just anywhere to just sit and get off your feet. It really began to change probably around that time. So that's my personal opinion. I'd say the 1990s was when it really began to turn and really began to grow.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that that convention center is such a huge part of San Diego Comic-Con, and I didn't realize when they actually moved into it because my history with the event doesn't go back that far. Because I mean that place is iconic. I mean anybody who's familiar with it, that's the future world, and Demolition Man is basically the San Diego Convention Center. It's a pretty interesting venue, and I remember being blown away the first year that I went. I still have my souvenir book from the first year that I went, which was at the sort of end of that first era, if you will, of that big expansion. This is in 1999, so this is the 30th annual San Diego Comic-Con there. And I did go there as a exhibitor. I went there to actually promote the books that I was working on at the time. I had a partner who was also my roommate. He was an artist. I was trying to get into writing, so we thought we would make a natural good pair. We came up with a couple different concepts, basically 3 different ideas for 3 different books, and we actually had a plans somewhat, because in the first year we said, hey, we're not even going to try to sell anything. We're just going to bring a bunch of flyers with the characters on it and just give them out to people, and we'll dress up like the characters. And we had my dad dress up as one of the characters. One of the characters was based on my dad, and we did that, and we just had a blast. I mean, we were blown away. I grew up going to Star Trek conventions as a kid. I went to Star Trek conventions, and even the biggest Star Trek convention that I went to, which one of them was actually at Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Phoenix, Arizona, which is where the state fairgrounds is. And that used to be the big hometown arena. It used to be where the Phoenix Suns played. And they filled maybe a third of it. You know what I mean? And they had like a special section cut off, and basically the exhibitors were in the basement. And that was the one basically, which I think was the golden age of Star Trek, basically, because you had DeForest Kelley representing original Trek. Michael Dorn was there representing Next Gen, and then Armin Shimon was there representing Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine had just come out, and it was just like a cool moment. Yeah, that convention was nothing compared to San Diego Comic-Con, and we're talking in 1999. I mean, the convention was so much bigger. Like you mentioned, by that time, according to that book, they were around 50,000 attendees. That was huge back then. You just didn't have conventions, fan conventions like that. That didn't exist. 13,000, like they said, oh, we went from 13,000 to you didn't have 10,000 people go to a Star Trek convention or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just, unless you're talking about like a really big city or something like that, you know, maybe, but it just didn't happen. So, you know, I was just like, my eyes were like popping out of my head. And that was before the film industry really kind of took it over. In fact, I think that was the last year before they expanded, because the year that we went, there was no Room 20. There was no Ballroom 20. Anybody who's been to San Diego now knows all about Ballroom 20, because that's where all the television stuff is. And there was no Hall H. People that haven't even gone to San Diego Comic-Con, they know about Hall H, because that's exactly where that Iron Man stuff that Dave was talking about, that's where that happens. First year I went, they didn't have any of that. Didn't even exist. The space didn't exist. It was basically half the size of what it is now. And I was still blown away. I was completely blown away. I was floored by how big that event was. You know, I actually got to meet some celebrities, because at that point they actually did have people in the sales pavilion where they would set up and they would give you autographs and pictures. And it wasn't all about like, you know, what they do at so many conventions now, where you have to do like a photo op and you pay like $100 just so you can be herded, you know, next to somebody. No, you could just walk up and talk to Richard Hatch. You know, Richard, I remember from Battlestar Galactica, I was just floored. You know, I could go over there and talk to so many of these different actors from different shows. I remember there was a lot of folks at that time from Xena. There were a lot of actors from Xena, and I remember meeting some of them and talking to them, and you'd have a conversation with them like a human being. And it was just amazing. It was a totally different atmosphere from, you know, what it eventually grew into in a very short period of time. And I was looking at my little collection here of all these souvenir books, and my last one is from 2012. So basically from 1999 to 2012, pretty much every year I went to San Diego Comic-Con. I think there might have been 1 year that I didn't go, but like basically that entire time I went like every year. And it was a big event for me and my family because my dad was into the publishing of the books with me. My dad was actually working on his own animation project at the time. And he would go there every year to actually get the new version of his animation software, because he actually found the animation software at the event. And every year he would go to get the new version of it, because that's the way it was back then. The internet was in its infancy and you didn't download files and things like that. No, you had to actually go find somebody to give you the new version of the program. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, the way that it's evolved, you know, in terms of especially just the physical space, because like I said, anybody who's gone to San Diego Comic-Con, say within the last 10 years, they know all about Ballroom 20. They know all about Hall H. You hear about it even if you're just looking at the news from Comic-Con, you've heard of it. It didn't exist the first time I went.
So I was just going to show this because Eric had pulled a bunch of stuff, and then I felt kind of bad afterwards. So I've been kind of slowly going and grabbing things kind of here and there. I know I can get to kind of quickly and easily. So the first year I went to San Diego Comic-Con, I was actually in San Diego to take part in what was actually called the Joe Kubert summer cartoon. It's a sequential. Now I'm blanking on the name of the school. Anyhow, Joe Kubert, or the Kubert School as it's referred to now, the Kubert School was at the time, and it still is to this day, is sort of the premier place to actually learn about creating comic books and creating comic book art. They've trained the greatest number of comic book, working professionals, and it almost doesn't matter what era it is. Ever since the school has existed, they've turned out some of the best professionals in the industry. The Kubert School, and specifically Joe, they would do these summer institutes, and they would range anywhere from 1 to 2 days to 3 to 4 days, depending upon what they were doing. Well, they were doing their summer institute in advance of San Diego Comic-Con that year. So while we were taking our classes and stuff and doing that, they were encouraging us to go over to the convention center and do the portfolio reviews as well. So that was encouraged for us to do. So I was going over and kind of doing day passes and actually doing portfolio reviews when I had time, when I wasn't actually doing the classes for the Summer Institute. And so this is the only one I kept. This is actually my Friday day pass from San Diego Comic-Con from 1993. My name is written in there. Didn't have my name printed on or anything. I just wrote it and stuck it on a sticker. And a lot of people don't realize that these badges, they're actually sort of like memberships into an organization. It's not really like an admission per se. You're sort of purchasing or paying dues to become part of something. And then this is the conference or the convention that happens in conjunction with that. So this is from 1993. And in addition to that, too, I've told the stories. So I guess I'll go ahead and show this. I went and dug this out. At that same convention, and I'm going to give you another recommendation on Amazon Prime if you have it. At that same convention that I had been reading about the Roger Corman Fantastic Four film in Comic Scene magazine. I was very excited about it. Really wanted to see it. I didn't care how bad it was. I just wanted to see it. I was really jazzed about it. They had a little table set up. It wasn't like a big deal. It was just a table set up, and they had a small television, small color television, and it was playing on a loop on VHS, the first trailer for Roger Corman's Fantastic Four film, the trailer for the movie that never got released, that eventually did get basically leaked or released as a bootleg that's now become legendary. They had the trailer for it playing. And the reason I even knew to look for it is in all the hustle and the bustle of the convention, I'm a big movie soundtrack guy, and I love movie music. And I was like going, I can hear the Battle Beyond the Stars, James Horner's theme from Battle Beyond the Stars playing somewhere. And I kind of walked around until I found it, and I saw this television. I was shocked to see it was actually footage from the Fantastic Four movie. And I was just standing there watching it play. And I was like going, oh man, this is kind of fun. This is kind of cool, right? Like I'm kind of, because I was really looking forward to it. And as I was standing there, and the first year I went to San Diego, this happened. This was the only year that it happened, was just that first year. As I'm standing there watching this television, this guy comes over with, the movie or the rock show. They have like the little gold things that have the rope or whatever that's kind of like marks off a line or something, or Noah Bittens, I forget what it's called. This guy comes over and he's got him in his hand. He walks over and he sees me standing there. He looks at me. He's like, "Are you in line?" And I'm like, "Sure." And so he puts him down in front of me. He does the rope thing. And I'm like, I wonder what I'm in line for. Because it actually happened to me several times at that convention. That's actually how I met Peter David, was the same way. But anyhow, so I'm standing there and I'm waiting. And lo and behold, here comes the cast from Roger Corman's Fantastic Four movie. They came out and they sat down. It was the first time I met Joseph Culp. I met Joseph Culp actually several years ago, actually for the screening of his independent film that he actually produced and directed, Welcome to the Men's Group. And so anyhow, they were all sitting there, and it was the entire cast except for the gentleman who played Reed Richards, whose name escapes me at the moment. But Joseph Culp was there, Michael Bailey Smith was there, and Rebecca Staub, who played Susan Storm. So it was basically Ben Grimm, The Thing, Dr. Doom, and the Invisible Woman were all there. I was so excited. And I can't remember his name either. It escapes me at the moment. But the gentleman who played the Human Torch wasn't there. But it was just the three of them. And they had black and white headshots. When I was like, cool. And Joseph Culp was the first person I talked to. And he's like, he looks at me, he's like, so do you want an autograph or something? And you could tell he was kind of new to all this, right? And I was like, yeah, that would be awesome. And so I got to talk to them while the line actually formed behind me, because I was the first person in line. So I have autographed photos of all of them as their characters from the Fantastic Four. Now they're put away in a box to keep them nice, so I'd get those out. Those are too hard to get to. But one of the other things I got was this. So people have heard me talk about it, but this is actually a Fantastic Four. This is a Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie promotional button. This thing is huge too. You see it next to my Red Skirts emblem. It's huge. I've had this thing ever since then. I have such fond memories of meeting them. You see, it says right there, fall of 1993. This movie never came out, folks. Never came out, except as a bootleg. Now, what's interesting about this, and the reason I bring up Amazon Prime, is if you're curious to hear the story about what happened to Roger Corman's Fantastic Four movie and why it never came out, on Amazon Prime, you can actually watch Doomed. Now, Doomed is a documentary produced by fans like us who just are curious about what happened to the film, but you can actually watch Doomed on Amazon Prime, as well as Comic Book Confidential, make it like a double feature, but they're both on Amazon Prime. I highly recommend them. And you get the whole story about what happened with Roger Corman's Fantastic Four movie and why it never came out from everyone involved. But here's a piece of Comic-Con memorabilia that I've loved and held on to for years and years and years.
That's very cool. And Bobby hit the nail right in the head. He said, right place at the right time. That's awesome.
Yeah. One of the few times.
Stories like that at San Diego Comic-Con. That's the way it was, especially back in the day. I don't know if you get so many stories like that in the last couple of years, because everybody's behind a wall of security now. So it's harder to have those kind of moments. But it's amazing when you think about that, because of the context that was a film that was never even meant to ever come out. I mean, it's just like, so what were they doing? Why were they even trying to promote a film that was not supposed to come out? Really crazy. That's a crazy story. I'm really interested in that documentary. I remember when it was being promoted. And I couldn't, at the time, I just didn't have the money to go and buy a copy. I didn't know it was on Amazon Prime. So now I want to check it out, I want to check it out myself and see what the deal was.
Well, and they talk about, they actually talk about this San Diego Comic-Con on the documentary. And cool. They talk about why they were out promoting it and what was going on. I mean, literally, the whole story is in that documentary on of Doomed. And it's really interesting and it's really fun. And it highlights sort of like how much impact the fans can have when they love something, but on the other side too, it highlights sort of the dark side of the entertainment industry at the same time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's very interesting. I highly recommend it. It's really cool. Those are two really great. Like if you with Comic-Con not happening, if you want that sort of inside story like that you get at those panel discussions, the thing that's really cool about Comic-Con, the Comic Book Confidential, is you get sort of the comic book and the indie publishing side directly from the creators, which is fun, and a little history like you would in a panel. And then you flip over, you check out Doomed, and you get that movie. So that movie panel about what happened to that movie. I love that, or what, you know what I mean? It's that same kind of fun thing. So I highly recommend both of those.
Well, I remember Stan Lee. Stan Lee was always all over Comic-Con the years that I went. He was just all over the place, always promoting different things. Sometimes it'd be something retro. He always had a new project, so a lot of times he was promoting something new. But he was doing something. I have no idea what the topic was. But somebody sniped him on Fantastic Four and just asked, like, what the hell happened to Fantastic Four, man? That kind of a thing. And he actually gave a really pretty good answer, I thought, which was, he said, basically that was done for like licensing and rights. And it was done under kind of like bad pretenses where everybody thought they were making a real movie and they weren't. And he said it was a real shame that they did that. Like he admitted it was just like, it was really effed up thing that we did to them. That's basically what he said, but in nicer words, So it was really interesting. See, that's another thing, a part of Comic-Con is sometimes you would get those candid moments with people where you would they'd be kind of caught off guard by a fan or something like that. They'd ask them a really controversial question and they'd actually give you an answer. They'd actually tell you in front of like hundreds, thousands of people, like, well, this is what happened. We really effed these people over. You know what I mean? We really
guess how the documentary starts.
What's that?
With footage of Stan Lee at San Diego Comic-Con trying to answer that question. That's the documentary. That's where it starts.
There you go.
Literally, it starts with him talking about it. And it's crazy. And then they have pull quotes that they put throughout it. It's really, really interesting. So
there you go. Going backwards a little bit, man, as Sam was saying, Dave, I think you mentioned before that Kubert are still offering classes for kids. Do they still get good attendance? And I do remember, Dave, that was a story you brought up in a past episode, and I don't know if you followed up on that at all.
Well, they used to offer what they called Saturday classes actually at the school, and the school is actually located in Dover, New Jersey. I've never actually been on the campus. I've just seen pictures of the campus. I've always wanted to go there. Actually, it's actually an old high school that actually Joe through some kind of deal bought either from the school district or from the city. I forget exactly how that worked. And then prior to that, they had been occupying some actually just business office space. The early classes were actually just held in that kind of an environment. And as far as the Saturday classes, I don't know what's happening as far as physically on the campus. I would imagine because of how bad the pandemic was there that they're not still having those. However, what they were doing, Man of Santa, is they were actually making those available online. And so that people could just tune in on Saturdays and still kind of do the Saturday drawing classes. And then as an adult or a kid, you could just, obviously just, watch it online and participate and follow along. As far as I know, they're still doing those. And then in addition to that, they've actually just started just doing a regular show, actually based out of the school. And I would tell you more about it, but they do it the same day that we do this show. So it may actually be going on right now for all I know. So in a weird way, they're kind of competing with us for sort of like a similar audience to an extent. But as far as how well attended the Saturday classes are, right now I do not know, but I don't think they're doing physical on-site classes anyway. But I know, as far as I know, they're still doing the online Saturday drawing sessions. But I think it's just happening like on Facebook and YouTube. I would just recommend go to their Facebook page. You're just looking for a Kubert School. That's Kubert, just like Joe Kubert. You can even just do a search for Joe Kubert School on Facebook. I'm sure it will come up. And then just go there and they would be announcing what they have going on. So, and then that was amazing too, because, my instructors actually in that summer institute, it was amazing. One of them was Hi Iceman, who was actually either created or co-created Wildcat for DC Comics. one of the earliest artists who actually worked on Black Canary. And of course, Joe taught a lot of our classes. It was great actually meeting Joe and being there long enough to be able to get to just call him Joe, because that's what he wanted us to call him, was just Joe. And that was just amazing to get to meet one of my childhood heroes and work with him and have him provide me advice and critique my art and help me to grow and improve. I learned so much that weekend. It was just crazy. And one of our other instructors who became a hero of mine was actually Jose Delbo. Jose Delbo, I think for most people who are longtime comics fans would know Jose Delbo actually drew the NFL Super Pro comic, talking about comics and media and tying things together. He actually drew NFL Super Pro, but he also had a fairly long run actually on Wonder Woman. And what I learned actually that weekend, I didn't realize, is Jose Delbo actually drew a lot of the Superpowers mini comics. I didn't realize he was the artist who did a lot of those, but a lot of those Superpowers mini comics, a lot of us enjoyed as kids. Jose Delbo actually did a lot of the artwork for that because he did a lot of stuff for actually back then what they used to call their special projects division. That was a part of DC Comics. It did a lot of the tie-in stuff like the Hostess fruitcake, fruit pie, cupcake ads, the Superpowers mini comics, whatever it was. They were the ones who did up a lot of that artwork. Like you'd see the cool artwork selling toys or action figures, but you could tell it was drawn art. That was the special projects division that did a lot of that work.
Yeah, that's a lot of course, what people will be missing at the Comic-Con at home and in that format, the virtual format, is it's like you don't get to really meet, your heroes and stuff like that. That's just not going to happen. I've always thought that they could kind of do that a little bit better, maybe even a little bit easier, because I know a lot of celebrities at all sorts of levels. They're not necessarily all that comfortable with people physically a lot of times. That's why a lot of times your experience with them will be in an incredible downer, because it'll be like, ooh, I really like that guy until I actually met him. But with one thing that's possible, but I don't see them really doing for San Diego Comic-Con, is you could have like a little Zoom conversation, something like what Dave and I are doing right now with each other, could very easily be done with the technology that we have these days, where you could have a little bit of interaction and time with people. I don't think they're really doing anything like that at Comic-Con, and there's a lot of things that they're not doing, and that's what I kind of wanted to focus on as far as blast from the past. And one of the things I think is really interesting, because we were talking earlier about how big San Diego Comic-Con has gotten. San Diego Comic-Con has gotten so big that they cannot fit all the content in the convention center. There is literally a backlog of basically publishers, TV studios, animation studios, movie studios that want to be at the event but can't, just because there's only so much physical space. And to Comic-Con's credit, they designate certain spaces for certain things. In other words, they're not going to put a studio in the comic book area. They're just not going to do that. They're not going to give them that space. And they've committed to that. Despite all the criticism they get, they could easily sell the entire convention to movie studios and television studios, but they don't do that. But an example of this, a story that I have from back in yesteryear, was they were actually promoting the Nickelodeon cartoon for Teenage Mutant Turtles. And you were able to go to this event. It almost looked like a little circus sideshow kind of thing. And basically, they had this parking lot, and it was like kind of between like basically where you got off on the trolley, for one of the stops for the trolley, and where the convention center was. And there was this big parking lot, and they had all this stuff going on to promote Teenage Mutant Turtles. And they had a lot of the actors there. Well, you could get a bunch of free stuff. And I actually got this. It's like a trucker style hat of the Foot Clan. This is stuff they were just giving away for free in the parking lot, along with all these other activities. Again, it was very much like a carnival atmosphere. And as I was walking in that area and walking to the convention center after hanging out there, I got that hat, and then I got this hat as well. I got one for the Turtles. So I got one for the Foot Clan and one for the Turtles. It's all free. Well, one of the actors that was involved with that project was Sean Astin, who's also, in Lord of the Rings, Rudy. That's what I really knew him from, because I love that movie. I own that movie. I think it's one of the best sports movies ever made. I love that movie so much. And I was just walking to the convention center. And by that time, I was starting to get into filmmaking on a very low level. I was starting to get into doing short films and things like that. And in my research and stuff, I had seen that Sean Astin actually had done a short film. And this was after he had started Lord of the Rings. So he was pretty big by this point. And I had a vague notion he was at the convention because I knew they were promoting Turtles. I knew he was doing one of the voices. Well, I'm just walking along, in between the events. And I see him. And he's just bebopping along too. And so I did the thing that, they say probably never to do, and it's always awkward and never ends well. And I basically did hey, can I talk to you for a second thing? And he was like, yeah, sure. I got to get to where I'm going, but you can walk with me. So I walked with him. Basically, he was walking to the covered parking, the better parking. So he was walking there. And I just started talking to him about the process of how do you get someone like you into a short film and stuff like that. And he was actually pretty cool about it. He basically said it's all done through the agents and the managers and things like that. It's not very direct. You almost never get to go to an actor and just pitch him a project and stuff like that. It just doesn't work that way. It's just not the way the industry works. But we had I made a good enough impression on him after everything that we were talking about. He was sort of smiling, and we were about to, part ways because he was going into the garage. I was going back to the convention center. And he said, hey, because I was already wearing this hat. And so it was a great coincidence, right? Because he's there promoting the show. I'm wearing this hat. And he said, hey, give me your hat. And I was like, okay, is he going to take my hat or something like that? Or is he trying to be funny? Well, no, he actually signed it. It's really hard to see because he actually had to use just the ballpoint pen or whatever he had. He didn't have like a nice Sharpie or anything like that. And he just went ahead and signed my hat and then handed it back to me. And this was really funny, just to show you how cognizant he is of stuff. He said, I hope I didn't ruin it. You know what I mean? Because, there's those idiot collectors out there. They're like, oh, it's not vintage anymore. You messed it all up. He was cognizant enough to kind of perceive that. And I said, no. I much prefer you having it with your signature on it than without. But I don't think you see much of that anymore at Comic-Con. Certainly not with actors of that level. You know what I mean? Because he didn't charge me a dime.
That's very cool. It's very cool. I've told the story before. One of my favorite sort of con interactions so let me set this up real quick. So obviously the first time I went back in 93, I was an aspiring professional. I had just actually left college under not the world's greatest circumstances. I had a huge dispute with an art history professor, and I'll continue to tell that story until I'm put in the grave. So I had a lot of issues and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, what I needed to do. I wasn't sure, and actually found a direction there that's served me mostly well. We'll put it that way over the years. And then many years later, after I'd been kind of attending just as an attendee, and then eventually my wife and I we started going just to do it for fun because we enjoyed it. Because my wife is more of a movie and a TV fan, and I'm obviously more of a comics fan, and we could find things that were fun for both of us that we both enjoyed. And then we just started attending just to attend. And then eventually, I don't want to tell the whole story about my accident and everything that basically sort of spawned Bushy Tales. But many years later, I went back as an exhibitor, and my wife, who also worked on Bushy Tales, and then the co-creator of Bushy Tales, Lynn Workman, and I, we set up actually at San Diego Comic-Con, like Eric did, as a vendor, actually, and an exhibitor, actually selling comics and T-shirts and whatnot to attendees. So I think it was actually the second year that we set up as an exhibitor, and at that time they were promoting the Batman Brave and the Bold animated series. It's the one that was a little bit more kind of tongue in cheek, but it's still a great series. I highly recommend it. And Diedrich Bader, who had been on the Drew Carey show, was a regular on the Drew Carey show. He's done a ton of voiceover work. He's a comedian. He's a really funny guy. He's a great actor. He was also in Office Space. He was the main character's roommate in office. Well, he just lived in the apartment next to him in office space. But anyhow, Diedrich Bader is a really funny guy. He's a really cool dude. And we had heard that he was going to be the voice of Batman in the Batman the Brave and the Bold series. So we're at our booth, and Lynn actually caught him as he was kind of walking by. And Lynn was like, "Hey, man, I heard you're going to be the new voice of Batman." He was super excited. And then he said something that when you hear people say it, they don't mean it. So as Lynn's like, "Hey, I heard you're going to be the voice of Batman." He's like, "Awesome." It's like, "Hey, I can't talk about it right now, guys. I got to do a panel. I'll come back later." Okay, well, he's a TV star. He's not going to come back later. Lo and behold, he did come back later. He had his kid on his shoulders and came back over to just talk to us about Batman. And he brought a whole bunch of stuff. He's like, "Hey, they were giving these away at the panel. I thought you guys would like it." And he gave us this bag full of all this Batman Brave and the Bold stuff in it. And he signed like Lynn's fan, because it was like this little weird fan, like you when you're hot, you fan your face or whatever.
I have the fan. That was one of the things I came across when I was looking through all this stuff. I have the fan still. That Batman Brave and the Bold fan. I still have it.
He hung out with us for felt like 30 or 40 minutes, and we just talked about Batman. And his son was there, and he was talking like he was so excited because his dad was going to be Batman, and it was just this fun kind of thing. And that's the kind of thing that doesn't really happen much anymore for obvious reasons. But that's still there's been a few sort of interactions I've had with celebrities at San Diego Comic-Con that kind of blew my mind, and that was one of them. Because a TV or movie star says, "I'll come back later to talk," they're not going to come back later. Well, Diedrich Bader did come back later. He was a huge Batman fan. He was super excited, and he couldn't contain his excitement. He just came over to talk to these two crazy Batman fans who tried to holler him down, on the convention floor. I still can't believe he came back. But yeah, just came back, hung out with us, and just talked about Batman for like 30 or 40 minutes. It was crazy fun. And it was really kind of neat of him. He's like, "All right, I got to go, guys." I'm like, "Hey, well, thanks for dropping by and saying hi." And of course, as I always do, I said, "Hey, this is our creator-owned series, Bushy Tells. Here's some copies. Maybe read them on the plane back home or whatever. I hope you enjoy them." It's like, "Hey, thanks, guys. That's awesome." So that's kind of the fun thing that used to happen at San Diego all the time. So, well, not all the time, but more frequently than it did. The last few years I went back to San Diego was a completely different experience for me.
Right.
For a lot of different reasons. But it had changed a lot from the early days. So.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I can relate. I have stories like that as well, where it's just amazing a very similar one where we waved somebody down, he walked away, and then he actually came back. So you definitely cannot transfer that to the virtual world. But I don't know how much that was really happening at the actual physical conventions either at this point. Now, another thing that is hard to transfer, obviously, to the virtual world is the swag, right? You get all this cool swag. Like I was showing the hats, but I was showing it more for the Sean Austin story. I didn't show you the hats. But like a big thing, like a lot of people would do is they go and they would like collect these little pins and stuff like that. And DC used to always have this thing where they had tons and tons of pins at their booth, and they would rotate them, and you would actually a lot of people would try to collect all the different DC booth pins, which obviously I tried to do as well. And then of course you get pins from all sorts of stuff. Oh, here's another one, Batman. I mean, these were pretty cool things. But then they'd have all these shows as things went on. What do you got there? Got your mic off. Dave, your mic's off.
This is the exclusive Bushy Tells button from San Diego Comic-Con. I think this was the second year that we exhibited at San Diego Comic-Con. This is the exclusive one. This is the Mika Yamashiro button. And then the other one was actually one of Kimio Agame, both from Bushy Tells. But yeah, this is one of the actual buttons that was limited edition for San Diego Comic-Con. They actually helped us promote the fact that you could get this at the convention. Nowadays, I imagine they wouldn't even bother with us. But it was really kind of a fun thing. But just to echo in on what you were saying there, Eric. So,
well, this is the one that I got that I was leading up to.
well, there you go. There's Territorial Rangers.
That was the one that I was leading up to with this discussion here. That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So I was going to talk that I got that at your booth that year. That was the year that you were there, and I got this at your booth, along with all these other things that I was collecting, all these other different pins. This was a different year, but this is also one that I thought has kind of a fun story to it, because this is when they were doing the new V show, the one that I quite frankly didn't like very much, but I was very highly anticipating it because I'm a big V fan of the classic V, especially the original miniseries and then also the Final Battle. Those two are my favorites. And what was really cool about this was they had the booth babes that were giving these out were in character as visitors. So they were like very Stepford wife, and they were like, hey, we're just here to make friends. And if you tried to talk to them like in a normal way, they stayed in character. And it was pretty cool. So that's another thing that you can't really emulate, unfortunately, on a virtual convention. And just something that, I think people might miss a little bit, but still appreciate,
Yeah, I was actually going through and because I've got so much of this stuff. Because I've kept so much of this stuff over the years.
Bobby has a story. He says, I brought a page from Witchblade issue 8 from Michael Turner. He let me sit with him while he signed for fans, and I was able to look through his portfolio. This was right after his Batman Superman run. I'll never forget how cool he was that he took the time. And those are the really good stories. You actually can get a lot better stories sometimes with the big comic creators, the big time comic creators a lot of times, than you can with, say, like the actors and stuff like that. Even though Dave and I just gave you 2 really good actor stories, you know what I mean? So that stuff happens too. But I think the idea that, that Bobby, you were able to sit there with him, look through his portfolio. I'm sure at the time, because I remember Witchblade being huge. I mean, at one time. So I'm sure that there was a lot of other people that were interested in that, because Witchblade was a very popular character. I remember when I remember back in the day, that wave and when that character was really popular. So yeah, those are the kind of things that unfortunately you can't really do in the virtual space, but it's still awesome you were able to do it. And I can hear Dave shuffling through. Are you shuffling through a bunch of your buttons?
Yeah, I was trying to find like interesting ones to show. Like this came from Heroes. The brother who could fly from Heroes. They were giving this away one year to promote the show Heroes. Here it is. I found it. This is one of the years we were at San Diego Comic-Con. This is one of the other exclusive Bushi Tells buttons. This is the Kimio Agame.
Oh, that's cool. That came out really well. That looks really
Can't
awesome.
really get on camera very good. My lighting keeps adjusting on my laptop camera. I keep trying to find a way to adjust it so it won't blow things out quite as bad, but I always have such an issue with it. And there's all, I've got a whole bunch of stuff from 300. They made a big promotional push for 300 years ago. Check this out. This is interesting. So this is a relic of the second time they tried to do Fantastic Four. Let me take this out. So I was actually at the Tim Story when they did the big reveal in Hall H for the Tim Story film, and they brought Michael Chiklis and everybody out and made a big deal out of it. This is actually the pin they gave away at the end of the panel. So this is for the Tim Story Fantastic Four movie when they announced it. I've actually got quite a few of these. I've got stuff for the Fantastic Four, Man of Steel, all kinds of stuff from over the years. And I've got tons of those smaller buttons and different things. There's a Mission Impossible one. I'm trying to see if I've got some really good ones. I think this is an interesting one. I got 2 more here, and I'll put this bag away because there's just so much random nonsense. This one, Greatest American Hero. When they released it on DVD, they're making a big deal of the complete series. For those people who remember Greatest American Hero. And then this is probably one of the oldest ones I have. This is actually from when they killed Robin. This is actually a memorial button from when the Jason Todd Robin died. That was a big deal when all that happened. So there you go. I got tons of this stuff. And I got some other stuff I kept just because I thought it was just kind of weird and fun. Anybody remember Team America World Police? They were promoting that.
I actually do remember that quite.
There's the promotional button they were giving away at San Diego that year, if I can get it on camera, for Team America World Police. All kinds of random stuff. And then some of these are just from random conventions. I always used to keep everything. Ooh, Las Vegas Comic-Con. That was the worst convention I've ever been to in my life. That's just my opinion. It's not like opinions of Retro Rogues or anyone associated with it. It's just my opinion. No, yeah. This is kind of fun. There's a Obi-Wan 08. It's like a campaign button. I don't know if you could see that. He says, he's our only hope, Obi-Wan in 08.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a ton and tons of swag. I've got my table here covered with stuff. There's no way I can even go through it just to show it to you. But I thought it would be fun to go through some stories, and this is obviously the context of stuff that unfortunately you cannot do in the virtual situation. But I thought we'd give you some stories about all the years and years that we went there, because both of us did go there for many years, and I think not always in the same context either. So we had some unique stories and stuff like that. So I wanted to make sure that we sort of shared some of that with you folks. Jane is saying, did Dave ever tell you the story about his brother and his rolling backpack?
All right. Well,
I sense a theme there.
Yeah, I'm trying. I tell that story privately with people. I don't make a big deal out of it. So I'll go ahead and give the context for it. So the first year my brother actually went with us to San Diego Comic-Con. He had a whole bunch of stuff he wanted to get signed. It was for him and his friends. He kind of made the same mistake I did the first year I went, and I took a whole bunch of stuff to not just get signed for me, but for my friends too, which sounds like a great idea until you realize you're carrying around a couple 100 pounds worth of comics and books and stuff for like 4 days straight. It sounds like a good idea at first, and then in hindsight, you realize like, wow, this stuff's really heavy. This really hurts. This sucks. But anyhow, my brother had done that. So he had this rolling backpack full of all this stuff that he wanted to get signed. And he had a really bad habit, because this is when the convention was beginning to get really kind of congested and crowded. And he had a really bad habit of rolling that backpack like over people's feet, or people wouldn't see it was there and they would trip over it or fall over it. And then it got kind of bad, because eventually he thought it was kind of funny, and he kind of snicker and laugh whenever it would happen. Okay. Well, he got called out a couple times for security, telling him to be careful and whatever. And we didn't think anything of it. And then the next year they banned rolling backpacks on the convention floor. So I just thought it was kind of funny that the year he had it, this was like a problem. And then literally the next year they banned the rolling backpacks. So I don't think he was totally responsible, but I do think he was partly responsible for getting rolling backpacks banned on the convention floor. And it had nothing to do, and the reason they did it had nothing to do with bomb threats or whatever. It was literally just a public nuisance was the reason they originally banned them. And I know my brother was contributing to that, because he would run over people's feet. He was tripping people with it. And it was just, and I was just, and he almost knocked me over with it once. So
I know from being on staff at conventions, that's just it's a total pain in the ass. Carts, rolling backpacks, all that stuff is just a complete pain in the ass to deal with in a crowded convention center. I know that from a completely different perspective, being on staff and having actually run the security department for Phoenix Comic-Con several years as well. So
yeah. So and I do have one other thing I thought would be fun to show off here just real quick. And talking about, if I can get them to show up on camera decent, talking about like the things that you can get at a comic book convention. One of the best things and the coolest things about San Diego Comic-Con is they had such an amazing artist alley. So the artist alley section of a convention, for those of you who haven't been to a convention, is where a lot of the professional artists and aspiring professional artists will actually set up, and they'll be selling, original pages from books they've worked on. They're there to sign stuff for people, do sketches for people. But one of the other things they'll do is they'll sell sketchbooks. So these are a couple sketchbooks. I have way more than this, but these are just a couple sketchbooks I got at San Diego Comic-Con. It was so funny because this Steve Rude one, I was really sure I got this one actually at San Diego Comic-Con, but I wasn't 100% certain. So it's got a nice full color cover. Of course, Steve signed it for me here down on the bottom. But you can see inside, it's just reproductions of let's get it back in frame here a little better. It's, basically reproductions of sketches and artwork. That one's a little risque. That he's done for fans or collectors or sometimes even for jobs. And I was thinking, I was pretty sure I got this at Comic-Con one year. And it's so funny. Stuck here in the middle is a bookmark. And actually on the bookmark, it actually says, stop by San Diego Comic-Con booth number 1737. So there's the bookmark actually from the year he was set up. But these are really cool. It's a neat way, if you can't afford to get a sketch, an original piece of art, a lot of times they sell these amazing sketchbooks, and they're not terribly expensive, and they're full of really awesome art. We got one here from Steve Rude. Here's one actually from Arthur Adams. And then, of course, Art signed it. And just some really awesome art and stuff inside these. And like I said, the thing that's kind of fun is sometimes it's previously published work. Like these are actually from some DC Comics series from back in the day. These were actually covers. I think it was the Showcase Spotlight was the name of the series. And then there's some progression stuff for there's a bunch of sketches on one page and then the final art on another. And then just really awesome commission stuff too. It was, where is that? It was a really cool one in here. Right here, I thought that one would show up really good on camera. The Thor and Colossus. So these are the really cool things. Now I was talking about Bill Stout on a previous show. Bill actually calls his convention sketches. And then this one, of course, he signed it here for me. And it's just, again, they're just full of just this really awesome art. Sometimes there's some text pieces to give it context, but just really awesome, cool art and illustration. And these are some of the fun things that you can get at a convention. And now you can get these things online now, but back in the day, you couldn't even get those kind of things online. A lot of times they weren't selling them. So one of the best places to get them was to just meet the person. And it's a fun way to have an awesome souvenir and collection of their artwork. And a lot of times they'll personalize it and sign it for you. Sometimes they'll have a blank page or something on the inside cover. And sometimes they even do quick little sketches or something inside. So these are, again, some of the fun things that you could get at Comic-Con International, other comic book conventions that are always fun. And all of these are actually bought at Comic-Con International. So.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun part of it, and I would say definitely that's one part that you can't duplicate that process, because even if you can get the book, as you said, online, I myself would actually wait sometimes. I knew somebody had material online, but if I knew I was going to see them at a convention, I'd wait to buy it from them at the booth, because then you get the opportunity to actually talk to them. They can sign it right in front of you. You can take a picture, all that kind of stuff. Looks like Bobby's taking off. He said, another great show, guys. Really enjoyed hearing your con experiences. I'll be ordering my Retro Rogue shirt and watching Doomed tonight.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Very cool.
That's a great way to end your evening there, Bobby. We appreciate that. And so I do want to go back to a comment because we only got 5 minutes left anyway, but I'm just going to go through the site really at blazing speed. We had a comment earlier that I don't know if John's even still here, but it was off topic, and that's why I didn't bring it up. But I'll bring it up right now as we're segueing. So he said, not to change the subject, but will Disney carry on with the Punisher, Jessica Jones, and or the Defenders, or is this just a pipe dream? John, everything I've heard said it's a complete pipe dream. Not going to happen. They are not going to bring back the Defenders for Netflix or Disney Plus. Anything. I haven't even heard that Disney Plus wants to revamp it with new actors. As far as I know, that is a complete pipe dream. Dave, have you heard anything about the Defenders? Basically the Marvel Netflix verse.
I think the Netflix verse is unfortunately pretty much done. I do think that there is the possibility that some of these characters could be done again in a different interpretation. And there might even be the possibility that we see these actors in similar roles or maybe even playing similar characters. But as far as the Netflix Marvel universe as we've seen it previously, I think it pretty much at this point, unfortunately, it still exists because you can still watch it, but I don't think it's going to matter in terms of the MCU continuity, because all the Disney Plus shows are definitely going to be within that continuity.
Right.
And then the sad thing is, just so John knows, and I think John and I've had a conversation about this before outside the show, but part of the problem and part of what's happening here is that the Netflix shows, in a weird way, are actually sort of a victim of a schism between basically executives within Marvel, enterprises or whatever they're calling it. Like there's basically Kevin Feige and one of the other gentlemen in positions of power. They don't see eye to eye, at least at one point, and they seem to be having an issue. And that's actually what caused the Marvel Netflix verse to not be more in line with the MCU shows in the way that, for example, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was at one time. It's literally a breakdown between executives running the TV division and the movie division. And now, as a part of the way things have been restructured several years ago, Kevin Feige is now in the position to kind of call the shots with what's happening with a lot of that content. That's why a lot of these things are kind of ending. And now the Netflix shows also ended too, because the deal with Netflix just ran out. But beyond that, there was actually a breakdown sort of in the executive structure between two of the people who had the ability to greenlight things, I might add. But I do think Punisher, I do think Iron Fist, I do think Luke Cage, I do think we'll see those characters again, maybe several years from now. And maybe they will be a part of some iteration of the MCU. But whether or not they're played by the same actors or not, I don't know. And part of that also, in all honesty, could just be because a lot of times maybe the actors themselves want to move away from those roles and distance themselves from it. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. I thought that John Barenthal did a great job as Punisher. I thought Charlie Cox was great as Daredevil. I actually kind of like the guy who played Iron Fist. I just feel like that the first season, there's a lot about the first season I like, and there's a lot about the second season I like a lot more. But it just feels like that, and I know a lot of people quite like Jessica Jones. So I just think that it, whatever that was, maybe its run is over. So, but like I said, I don't think it's the last time we're going to see those characters, because when you look at the Punisher, Dolph Lundgren's played the Punisher, Ray Stevenson's played the Punisher, Thomas Jane has played the Punisher, and now John Barenthal has played the Punisher. And I'm pretty sure there'll be a fifth. And then there's also other interesting characters I know that Marvel might want to do something with. Like, for example, we haven't talked about it, but there's the Cosmic Ghost Rider, which is a character that people really like, which is sort of like a version of the Punisher and Ghost Rider and the Silver Surfer all smashed into one. And in order to do that, you kind of have to reestablish the Punisher and Ghost Rider and all these other characters in order to lead up to a character like that they can have a lot of fun with in a movie. So I don't think we've seen the end of the Punisher in TV or movie productions, but maybe just this particular version. And I wouldn't honestly say that there's no chance John Barenthal couldn't come back as the Punisher either. I know he quite enjoyed playing that role, so I wouldn't be surprised if at some point maybe he does something with it. I don't know. Time will tell. Time will tell.
Okay.
All right. Well, sorry.
Well, here's the Comic-Con website, and we are done.
All right. Sorry.
In all seriousness, we are really getting at the end of time here. I did want to go over this site just a little bit, just because I know for a lot of people, you probably have no idea how this thing even works. I didn't until I kind of really went into the site and was trying to look at this and see what actually is going on. Because they are doing all sorts of things that you kind of like, well, how is that going to work? How is that going to work? How would you even do that? One of the cool things, though, I'll mention that they have is they do have an official program, and you can actually just download it, which is kind of cool. So you don't have to actually go through the issue of having to purchase it or anything like that. I think I can actually bring it up real quick with the souvenir book here. So you can see they're actually doing a celebration of 100 years of Ray Bradbury. That's actually what's on the cover there, which I think is really cool. It's kind of a neat cover there of Ray Bradbury there on a dinosaur thing, because it's not exactly a dinosaur, some sort of monster. But it's kind of cool because if you actually download this, it really brings you back to those old souvenir books. I did download. I don't know if it'll show up if I press it here. I might have to redo the tab that I have on there. But it's really kind of cool. It's like it really reminds you of those old the souvenir books, like the big pile of them that I have. It totally reminds me of that. Yeah, it's not allowing me to put it up there. I had it downloaded already. It's just not showing up right on my screen. It's one of the technical difficulties I have sometimes with StreamYard, because I don't have a separate screen, so it messes things up. But it's really neat because if you look at it, it has advertisements. One of the things I thought was interesting was, like, right off the bat, like the first thing on there is a bunch of Warner Brothers stuff. So we had actually done some previous coverage where we talked about the fact that DC and Marvel were not supporting Comic-Con. Well, that's not really true. That was really more of a half truth, because Warner Brothers is doing several panels at Virtual Comic-Con. I think with like Bugs Bunny, like the Warner Brothers cartoons, Looney Tunes, things like that. Some of the other cartoon properties, some Cartoon Network stuff. And then, of course, we talked about it earlier. They did a specific trailer for New Mutants for Comic-Con. So that, of course, technically is part of what's now the old Fox Studios, which is now called 20th Century Studios. But that's also kind of like we were talking earlier about sort of the rift that's happening within Marvel. That's a rift that's happening still within Marvel. In other words, Marvel's still having to deal with the Fox universe of X-Men and things like that. And you still have stuff like New Mutants that's still being developed or still waiting to come out, but it's already done. It's ready to go. So it's kind of interesting. So on the one hand, yeah, Marvel Studios technically, and Kevin Feige's not really doing anything, but yeah, you do have New Mutants doing something. And even though you don't have, let's say, they're not doing something for Wonder Woman 84, they are, Warner Brothers is doing stuff where they're bringing in stuff for Looney Tunes and all sorts of other stuff. So there is actually a lot of interesting stuff that's going to be going on at the virtual con. And pretty much all the panels and everything like that, you can pretty much get them by going to their YouTube site. So if you go to the Comic-Con at Home YouTube site, pretty much everything is there. They started already today at 3 o'clock. I'm definitely taking a look to try to see what panels I want to kind of take a look at. And then I'm hoping on our next episode, I bring back some of that information for our pop culture and streaming war segments. And then if you notice at the top over here on the page that I'm on, and this is the main site, there actually is a banner that says Amazon Virtual Con. So they're doing something. Amazon is an official sponsor of the Comic-Con at Home, but they're doing their own event concurrently with the San Diego Comic-Con at the same time, as opposed to what DC is doing, where DC is having their own event, which is Fandom, which has nothing to do with San Diego Comic-Con. So that's kind of interesting too. So far, I haven't seen any content come out on the Amazon Virtual Con link. It does say that technically their event begins tomorrow. Traditionally, San Diego Comic-Con, Wednesday night is a preview night. One thing that I really did think was kind of interesting, because it hasn't gone active yet, as far as I know, is they also have a like an exhibitor hall. So they have a virtual exhibitor hall. And I don't know if this link will work or not for me, because as of yesterday, it wasn't live. It's supposed to have gone live tonight, similar to how similar to how preview night actually works. Because the way preview night actually worked when they started it was you could only go into the exhibit hall. They might have like 1 or 2 panels, but it was really just about going in to see the exhibitor hall for a couple of hours before the event officially started the next day on Thursday. So they actually do have some sort of virtual exhibit hall. And like I said, as of yesterday, it wasn't active. It said it would go active today. Let me see if I can get that link to pop up. Let me remove this one and let me see if I can get the other one to work. And this is something I haven't been able to check out yet because it hasn't been active. It wasn't working when I went into it first. So let's see here. You can see they actually have what the hall would have looked like had they had the event, because basically all these vendors had already committed to doing San Diego Comic-Con this year. So it's kind of neat. So you can see what the layout would have been if they had actually had it. By the way, one of the interesting sort of controversies or something with this is that the famous DC booth has been merged with Warner Brothers and is on the other side, would have been on the other side of the hall. You know, we used to talk about how people used to actually meet at the DC booth. And I remember one year when Marvel wasn't even there. Things were so bad at Marvel, they actually didn't even have a booth. But the DC booth was sort of an icon. And if you look at this layout, they would have been in the corner with Warner Brothers, away from Marvel, away from IDW, away from Dark Horse, all the big comic companies, and they would have been over in the movie section, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna actually highlight just along those same lines. So the book I showed earlier was the souvenir book from '93, and at that convention, I was wanting to be in the comic industry. I wanted to be a professional comic artist, and had been drawing for a long time. I had actually done a little bit of assisting and ghosting, but I wasn't really sure how to actually make that a reality. And then this one here, this is the book from 2010. And what's interesting is in '93 was the first time I saw the DC Comics booth, and I remember thinking, "Wow, wouldn't it be cool to be able to be working for DC Comics and be able to be signing for people at the convention?" Well, the thing that's crazy is this year, 2010, that was the year that I got to do it, and I was at the DC Comics booth, and I did sign, although mostly we sketched, to be honest, because so many people wanted to sketch. But this was the year that I actually got to live out that dream and actually be at the DC Comics booth and actually sign that sketch for people. So I thought that would just
awesome.
be kind of fun to share the dream of maybe doing it and then the reality of getting to do it many, many years later. So
well, now no one else gets to do that anymore because there is no DC booth. So
yeah,
because now it's going to be the Warner Brothers DC booth. I do think that's kind of a shame that they decided to do that. But this thing is live now, so I'm confirming that right now. If you actually go onto this little file here, as you can see, I hit the Marvel thing, and right there it gives you company info and then products. And it says Marvel storyboards. I'm not sure exactly what that is. Maybe they're selling storyboards, but trying to see if some of this other stuff works. Yep. You got like another one. What is it? Bapper books, which I haven't heard of before. And there's some products there. So this is kind of interesting. So they actually do have a sort of a virtual exhibit hall. Like I said, it wasn't working yesterday. They said it would go live today, and it looks like it's working. So you can click on these different things. I'm guessing that I have heard that there is some Comic-Con exclusives, that they are going to still have some Comic-Con exclusives. And I would assume this is the way to get them. If you want to try to find some of those con exclusive items, I'm guessing this is the way to do it. But it's pretty interesting here because it looks like some of the exhibitors don't have anything. Like you can see here, Image Comics says, sorry, this exhibitor has not uploaded any products. And maybe they will tomorrow, because that actually is something that happened in real life at preview night. Some of the exhibitors wouldn't participate. But just going around here, well, there we go. There we go. We got a WWE Mr. T from Mattel, and I'm guessing that's some sort of exclusive or something like that. So there you go. So if you go on to the Comic-Con site, the exhibit hall is now open, and you can go there and look, and maybe you actually can find some con exclusives, because that's one thing that I know a lot of people, that's part of their con experience. I was actually going to show one of the big con exclusives I had, which is a Stan Lee that turns into Spider-Man, but they put it in a special box that's sealed. And I'm like, Well, that kind of stinks. So do I break the seals to show it to you, or do I just leave it in there as the quote unquote mint packaging? So because it's literally just a box with Stan Lee. It looks like I can show the box real quick because I have it handy. But it's kind of funny that they did this because I didn't realize it because I've just had it sitting in a box, or not a box, in a bag this entire time. But this is the box. You can see it's it's a cool box in terms of this is, you can see Stan Lee dressed up as Spider-Man, but it's just a white box and it's got seals on it. So you can't open it up to the actual display box that actually has like the window where you can actually see the character. And I didn't realize that until like literally yesterday when I dug this out so I could show it on the show. But apparently there are still con exclusives, so that's one thing that is not gone from Comic-Con. So you can go there to that virtual exhibit hall, and if you want to pick up some sort of exclusive toy, go ahead and do it.
And then Mike Norton actually is the one who did the artwork that's on that box. The box, and then the artwork.
Pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah. Mike Norton actually did the artwork that's on the box, but they reused that art on the blister pack for the action figure too. Mike's actually a friend. And Mike had a really fun run actually on one of the more family-friendly Spider-Man titles they did back in the day. Of course, he also had a very long run on Green Arrow. And the character I keep talking about teen superheroes, he's actually one of those people who got the opportunity to actually create a teen superhero for Marvel and Gravity. Gravity was a really, really great character, and that Gravity miniseries is really great. So, yeah. It's cool that you brought that up. I have that same one actually signed by Mike. It's in the closet. So
did you open yours?
No, I did not because Mike signed the box, so I just left it as is. So
yeah, I'm really debating that one. I didn't realize it was sealed like that. I thought I could remove it from that outer packaging so I could actually display it with the inner packaging because I know the inner packaging has a bubble, so you can actually see the doll. You can see Stan Lee, but oh well. The debates that collectors have, I suppose.
Yeah, Mike has a really great creator-owned series that was that he actually started doing as a webcomic that eventually Dark Horse actually collected into collections called Battle Pug, and it's sort of a Conan the Barbarian guy who rides around on a pug as if it was Battle Cat, like a pug dog. But Battle Pug, it's a really cool, fun series. So recommend people check it out. Yeah, Battle Pug. So
very cool.
Very cool. Well, just it was weird. It's almost like we timed that. Is that good? Do you have anything else you want to talk about, or do we think
we're over time? So
yeah, crazy.
I'm going as hard as I'm going to go. So
yeah, we never mean to do this. It just always seems to happen. So at least not go this long anyway. So so good. So are we okay to go to the outro?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. All right, so I want to thank you for hopefully watching or listening to this episode of the Retro Rogues Live. Again, my name is Dave Beatty. I have been one of your hosts. You can learn more about me, see some of my artwork, and all that kind of other fun stuff, as well as find links to previous episodes of the Retro Rogues on the Retro Rogues official website, which actually, ironically enough, happens to be my website, which is at davebeatty.com. That's DAVEBEATY.com. And even though there's no links to Kirby Tees, definitely check that out too. And I would want to thank Mr. Eric Alexander. My co-host here on the show. Eric, please tell the folks, hopefully watching, listening at home, where they can learn more about you on the interwebs.
I'm most active on Twitter. You can find me there. You can see my little name there, right there, BaseGod14. It's at BaseGod14 at BASSGOD14. My DMs are always open on Twitter. So again, if you want to just talk or have suggestions about the show, let me know. Hey, if you see something cool at the virtual Comic-Con that I'm not aware of, let me know about it. Or if you heard some cool buzz about what's going on, definitely send it my way. That's also the official YouTube, and that's also the official Twitch account. So any of those outlets as well, if you're involved with those, feel free to hit me up on there. And although I'm not sure if he's still here, John, we appreciated your comments today, and we can't say it better, right? He said, great show, guys. And with that, we will leave our viewers with the last word.